Once upon a time, in a quiet little town, I moved into an old house with my family. It was a big, creaky place that looked like it had been there forever. The walls were painted a faded yellow, and the windows were so dusty that you could barely see outside. My parents thought it was charming, but I felt a little uneasy as soon as we stepped inside. As we unpacked our boxes, I kept hearing strange sounds coming from the basement. At first, I thought it was just the house settling, like how a sleepy person might groan when they wake up. But as the days went by, the noises got louder. I could hear thuds and creaks, and sometimes it sounded like someone was whispering my name. "Is that you, Mom?" I would call out, but she was always busy in another room. One night, after my family went to bed, I decided to be brave and investigate the basement myself. I tiptoed down the hallway, my heart racing with every step. The wooden floor creaked under my feet, and I could feel the cold air coming from the basement door. I took a deep breath and slowly opened it. The basement was dark, and I could barely see anything. I grabbed a flashlight from the shelf nearby and turned it on. The beam of light cut through the darkness, revealing old boxes and cobwebs hanging from the ceiling. I shivered, feeling like something was watching me. As I stepped down the stairs, I heard it again, a whisper, soft and eerie. "Help us," it said. I froze, my heart pounding. Was I imagining things? I called out, "Who's there?" But there was only silence in response. I took another step, and the whisper came again, but this time it sounded closer. "Help us, please." I felt a chill run down my spine. I wanted to run back up the stairs, but my feet felt glued to the ground. Then I saw something move in the corner of the room. My flashlight flickered, and for a moment, I thought I saw a shadowy figure. "Mom! Dad!" I shouted, but my voice echoed back at me, making everything feel even creepier. I turned to leave, but the basement door slammed shut behind me. Panic set in as I pulled on the doorknob, but it wouldn't budge. I was trapped. The whispers grew louder, filling the space around me. "Help us! Help us!" My heart raced as I remembered the stories I had heard about old houses having spirits trapped inside. What if those whispers belonged to them? I felt a wave of fear wash over me. I had to find a way out. Just then, the flashlight flickered again, and I saw them. Two ghostly figures standing in front of me. They looked sad, their faces pale, and their eyes wide with fear. "You have to help us," one of them said, reaching out toward me. I stepped back, my heart racing. "What do you want from me?" I asked, my voice trembling. "We can't leave this place," the other ghost said, tears streaming down her face. "We need someone to set us free." I felt a mix of fear and pity for them. They looked so lost, and I could see they were trapped just like I was. "How can I help you?" I asked, feeling brave despite my fear. "You must find the key," one of the spirits whispered. "It is hidden in the walls of this house. Only then can we be free." I nodded, determined to help them. I needed to find that key and unlock the door before it was too late. But as I turned to search the room, I heard a loud crash above me. The house was shaking, and dust fell from the ceiling. I knew I had to hurry. I started looking through the old boxes, my hands trembling as I dug through the dusty items. I found old clothes, broken toys, and even a rusty old lamp, but no key. The whispers grew louder, urging me to keep searching. Suddenly, I noticed a loose board in the wall. I pulled at it, and it creaked open, revealing a small space behind it. My heart raced as I reached inside, feeling around in the darkness. My fingers brushed against something cold and metallic. I pulled it out, and there it was, the key. I held it up, feeling a rush of hope. "I found it!" I shouted, but the spirits looked worried. "Quickly, unlock the door," they urged. I ran to the basement door, my hands shaking as I inserted the key into the lock. It turned with a satisfying click, and the door swung open. I turned back to the spirits, who were now glowing with a warm light. "Thank you," they said in unison, their voices now filled with joy. "You have set us free." As they floated toward the door, the basement began to shake again. I stepped back, watching in awe as the spirits disappeared into a bright light, finally free from the darkness of the basement. The house felt different now, lighter somehow. I took a deep breath and stepped out of the basement, feeling a sense of relief wash over me. I had faced my fears and helped those trapped spirits find peace. From that day on, the whispers stopped, and I felt safe in my new home. I had learned that sometimes, even the scariest places can hold secrets waiting to be uncovered. And I would never forget the adventure I had in the basement, where I found courage and helped those in need. So, if you ever hear whispers in the dark, remember that sometimes they just want to be heard. And who knows? You might just find a way to help them too. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe and let me know where you're listening from. I'd love to hear your thoughts and any spooky experiences you might have had. Sweet dreams. The next few days were quiet. I half expected something spooky to happen again. At night, I would lay awake in my bed, listening to the house settling and the wind whistling outside. But the basement felt different. There were no more whispers, no more voices. I thought I had finally put the spirits to rest. One evening, a storm rolled in. The sky turned dark, and the wind howled like a pack of wolves. I was sitting in the living room with my family, trying to distract myself from the raging storm outside. Lightning lit up the room for a brief instant, and in that flash, I thought I saw something move near the basement door. I blinked, and it was just my imagination, or was it? After dinner, the power went out. The whole house was plunged into darkness. My heart raced. Mom grabbed a few candles, and we lit them, the soft glow casting long shadows on the walls. I could feel unease spread among us. The storm raged outside, and the wind screamed as if the house itself were alive and restless. In the flickering light, I glanced toward the dark hole of the basement door. The fear from before crept back into my mind. I wondered if the spirits were truly gone. What if they had not been released? What if I had only made things worse? My curiosity battled with my fear, but I knew I had to face it again. Can I check the basement? I asked my parents, my voice shaking slightly. They exchanged worried glances. Do you really think that's a good idea? Dad asked, his brow furrowed. I just want to make sure everything is okay, I insisted, trying to sound brave. Okay, but be careful, Mom said, looking uneasy. With a deep breath, I took a candle and slowly walked toward the basement door. The air was colder as I approached, and I could feel the fear creeping up my spine. I hesitated for a moment, remembering the ghostly figures and their sad, pleading eyes. They had wanted to be free, and I thought about how important it was to help them. I opened the door and stepped down the stairs. The darkness enveloped me, and the familiar musty smell hit my nose. I turned the candle sideways to light my path. The light danced on the walls, creating shadows that flickered and swayed like ghostly figures. Suddenly, I heard a soft sound, just a whisper. At first, I listened closely, straining to hear it over the storm outside. Help us find us? I felt a chill run down my spine, but I pressed on. I had to know what was happening. The basement felt different now. Instead of being just empty, it felt charged with a strange energy. I could sense that something was waiting for me. Then I heard it again, louder this time. Help us. You must find us. It echoed off the walls, almost as if it were coming from all directions. I turned around, scanning the dim corners, feeling the fear rising inside me again. What do you want? I called out, my voice trembling. The candle flickered violently, casting strange shadows that looked like hands reaching out to me. I stepped back, my heart pounding wildly. I was convinced I could feel the air shifting around me, a cold presence brushing past me as I turned to leave. But just as I was about to climb the stairs, I caught sight of something glimmering in the corner of the room. I stepped closer, the light illuminating what seemed to be an old, broken mirror lying on the ground. It was cracked, but beyond the cracks, I could see strange images swirling inside, faces that seemed familiar yet haunting. I felt drawn to it, as if it were calling my name. The faces changed from mere reflections to expressions of anguish, mouths opening and closing, forming silent screams. I gasped, realizing that these were the spirits from before, trapped within the glass. You must help us. Their lips seemed to form again and again. Just then, A sharp sound pierced the air, a crash from above. I jumped, the candle nearly falling from my hand. The house felt alive, the very walls trembling with energy. And then silence. A heavy feeling settled over me. I could no longer hear the storm. I slowly turned my head toward the basement steps, and there at the top stood a dark figure. It was hard to see, but I could make out the outline of a person, their eyes glowing faintly in the dark. My breath caught in my throat as I realized I wasn't alone. "Who are you?" I managed to whisper, my voice barely a sound against the stillness. The figure didn't answer. Instead, it took a slow step forward and another. The candlelight flickered as it moved closer, revealing more details. A tattered dress, matted hair, a face that looked impossibly sorrowful. I held my breath, heart racing, unable to move. Panic surged through me, but deep inside, a strange feeling of familiarity lingered. The closer it got, the more it felt like one of the spirits I had seen before. "Help," it finally said, its voice a raspy whisper. Before I could think, I stepped back, nearly tripping over the broken mirror. "I did help you," I shouted. "I found the key." But the figure just shook its head, a look of desperation in its eyes. "Not enough. You have to listen to understand." The air around me grew thick and heavy, aching with sadness. Realization hit me. These spirits weren't just lost. They were trapped by something darker, something that wanted to keep them here, feeding off their despair. My instinct screamed at me to run, but something deep inside urged me to stand my ground. "What do I need to do?" I asked, feeling a mixture of fear and determination. "Find the truth," the spirit whispered. "There is a secret hidden in this house. It has kept us here for so long." Just as it said that, the basement echoed with a loud creak. The walls seemed to shiver, and I felt the air whirl around me. "Time is running out," the spirit urged, its voice trembling now. In that moment of clarity, I realized I had to uncover whatever dark secret had been buried in this house. I took a deep breath, my fear shifting into resolve. "Show me," I demanded. "Lead me to the truth." The spirit pointed down into the darkest corner of the basement. My heart raced as I stepped closer, feeling a pull toward the shadowy area. It was cold and unsettling, a void that felt like it could swallow me whole. Suddenly, a loud rumble shook the house, and dust fell from the rafters. The darkness seemed to pulse like a heart, and I shivered. "What is down there?" I whispered, hardly able to speak. As if in answer, the shadows parted slightly, revealing a crack in the wall. I could barely see what lay beyond, but I felt a surge of energy in that space. It was like the house itself was alive, trying to warn me. "Be careful," the spirit called, but it was too late. With a rush of courage, I took a step closer, reaching toward the crack with trembling fingers. That was when I heard it, the voice of the house, loud and clear. "You should not be here," it boomed, shaking me to my core. I pulled away, my heart racing, but deep inside, I knew I couldn't turn back now. I had to uncover the truth, and whatever secrets lay behind this dark wall. With trembling hands, I began to pry at the crack, my fingers slipping into the darkness. What I found next would change everything, sending chills through my body as I unearthed terrifying truths that had been hidden for far too long. The creeping dread filled the air as I unearthed secrets from the depths of this house, uncovering the horrors and the untold stories that the walls had kept buried. And with every revelation, the stakes grew higher. The spirits were counting on me, and I would not let them down. I felt their presence around me, guiding me through the darkness, wrapping me in their desperate plea for freedom. I had to be strong, I had to understand. I had to find out what sinister force had trapped them and was waiting in the shadows for its next victim. I steeled myself as I drew nearer to the crack, feeling the weight of the spirits around me urging me on. This was just the beginning. The true horror lurked ahead, and I was determined to face whatever darkness awaited me. Would I find the truth, or would I also become trapped forever, just like them? As I pressed my hands against the crack, I felt a surge of energy. It tingled, as if the house itself was alive. I pushed harder, and the old wood splintered beneath my fingers. The darkness opened up more, the shadowy space widening to reveal a hidden compartment. My heart raced with dread and curiosity. What could be inside? My candle flickered precariously in the cold air, threatening to go out. I could barely see into the newly exposed darkness ahead, but something about it pulled me closer. What if this was the key to the spirit's freedom? I took a deep breath, steeling myself against the terror that clawed at my throat. I reached into the crack, my fingers brushing against something cool and smooth. It felt like a box, small and weathered. I pulled it out slowly, careful not to drop my candle. The box was intricately carved, covered in dust and dirt. It looked old, very old, like it had been hidden away for years. As I brushed off the dust, I could see strange symbols etched into its surface. They twisted and curled, some I recognized from stories, tales of spirits and old curses. This might be important, I murmured to myself, feeling a thrill of fear mixed with excitement. But the moment I lifted the box, the basement trembled again, a deep groan echoing through the walls. A darkness enveloped me, creeping closer, as if the house were angry for waking something it had hidden away. I felt a rush of fear wash over me, but the spirits were there, urging me forward. "Open it," they whispered, their voices a mix of hope and desperation. I looked around, knowing I shouldn't be here alone. I needed the truth about why they were trapped, and maybe this box held the answer. With shaking hands, I found the latch and lifted it. The box creaked open, and a chill filled the air. Inside, I saw a tattered piece of paper and an old locket. The locket glimmered faintly, as if beckoning to me. I picked up the paper first. The writing was faded but legible, and I felt an icy grasp around my heart as I began to read it aloud. "To those who find this," I spoke, my voice trembling, "this house harbors a great secret. Those who wish to release the spirits must find the truth of their sorrow." As I read, the air grew colder, and the whispers intensified. "We were wronged," the spirits cried, their voices mingling with the wind. "Remember our names?" I swallowed hard, glancing at the locket. Opening it, I found a tiny portrait of two children, one boy and one girl, their faces pale and somber. Were they the spirits? My heart ached as I realized they looked so sad, as if life had been ripped from them. But the comforting warmth of the candle started to falter, flickering dangerously low. It was as if the spirits were feeding off my energy, growing stronger and more desperate that I continue. "Help us remember," they begged. I suddenly felt an overwhelming sense of dread. This was not just a house, it was a prison. Had their lives been taken within these walls? What had happened to them? The questions clawed at my mind, urging me to dig deeper. Just then, a cold gust of wind blasted through the basement, snuffing out my candle's flame. I gasped, plunging into darkness. Panic set in, and I felt my heartbeat quicken, echoing in the stillness. I scrambled back towards the stairs, my breath coming in sharp gasps. The shadows moved around me, swirling and darkening as if something were closing in. "You can't leave," a voice howled, a chilling rasp that sent fear coursing through me. I stumbled, trying to regain my footing. "No, I need to help you," I cried out, fear gripping my chest. As I turned to face the remnants of the darkness, I could almost make out faces in the shadows, twisted and tortured. Eyes watched me with yearning, but they were filled with anger and sorrow. Everything felt overwhelming. I had opened something I didn't understand, and I was now deep in the heart of the house's dark history. The air thickened, and I could barely breathe. "Don't let them take you," the spirits shouted in a rush, their voices swelling like a storm. "Find the truth. Dig deeper." In that moment, I realized I couldn't just run away. I had to confront whatever evil had kept them here. Their words strengthened me. "I won't abandon you," I declared, forcing myself to remain still. Blindly, I reached for the broken-down boxes scattered around the basement, trying to find anything that pointed to their story. The whispers urged me on, and I began to organize the old items, hoping one of them would lead me closer to answers. Underneath a pile of rotting newspapers, I found another box, this one larger and made of heavy wood. I dragged it into the dim light of the corner and threw it open. Inside was a collection of forgotten objects, rusted toys, a diary with frayed edges, and old photographs. My heart raced as I unfolded the diary, the pages fragile and yellowed with age. As I scanned the words, I realized it was the story of the two children from the locket. The entries described their lives in this house, filled with laughter and love, but there was an abrupt change in the tone. They spoke of a darkness creeping closer, a malevolent force that had begun to lurk in the shadows. Mom and Dad are worried, one entry read. They say we need to be careful. Sometimes, the house feels different, like it's watching us. I felt the blood drain from my face. The same feeling I had sensed was there long ago, lurking underneath the floorboards. What if that darkness hadn't been just a feeling? The last entry was chilling. If you read this, we are gone. Something took us. We couldn't stop it. A wave of sorrow washed over me, understanding their fear. They hadn't just been trapped. They had been hunted. The shadows I had felt were more than just remnants of sadness. They were the echoes of a malicious presence. Just then, I heard a rustle behind me, like footsteps approaching. My heart crashed in my chest, an instinct kicked in. "Who's there?" I called, my voice trembling. There was no answer, only the oppressive silence of the basement pressing in on me. I turned quickly, scanning the darkness. In the corner of my eye, I saw movement. A shifting shadow danced around the room, almost teasing in its approach. The sense of fear was suffocating, and every instinct told me to flee, but I needed the truth. I couldn't let fear dictate my actions now. As the shadow grew closer, it began to take shape. A figure hunched over, its face obscured. My heart thumped wildly, and I gripped the diary tightly, ready to use it as a shield if needed. "What do you want?" I shouted into the dark, trying to keep my voice steady, but fear was creeping in like the shadows that surrounded me. Suddenly, the figure lunged forward, and I felt a rush of cold air sweep through me. I stumbled back, nearly tripping over a loose floorboard. The figure's eyes glowed with an icy light, and I could feel the weight of its presence pressing in, suffocating my will to fight. "Leave," it hissed, and the word echoed like a death knell. "You should not have come here." "No, I won't leave until I understand," I yelled, surprising myself with my own defiance. The figure hesitated, hovering just beyond my reach, its face still hidden behind shadows. There was an eerie stillness, as if even the house itself was holding its breath. The air crackled with tension, and I thought for a moment I might actually be able to confront whatever was haunting this place. "Tell me why you're doing this," I shouted again, yearning for answers, my fear melting into determination. In response, the shadow shifted, revealing a glimpse of a face, pale and twisted, filled with anger and sorrow. I recognized it. It was another of the trapped spirits, lost and twisted by its own anguish. "You are the key to our fate," it whispered darkly, the voice dripping with despair. "But darkness will consume you if you are not careful." As those words hung in the air, I felt a cold pull at my gut, an urge to surrender and run. But I wouldn't let fear win. The spirits depended on me. I had to do this for them. "I can help you," I shouted, hoping to pierce the darkness surrounding it. For a moment, the figure wavered, and I saw their sadness emerge, a flicker of hope lighting their hollow eyes. "Help us remember. Help us escape." A surge of warmth washed over me, igniting a spark of courage I didn't know I had. "I will," I promised, determination filling me. "But I need to know the truth. What do I have to do?" The spirit hesitated, the darkness around it swirling like a storm. "Learn of the past, confront the shadows. Only then can we be free." As I took in what it said, another wave of fear struck me. This was more than just facing shadows. This was about uncovering horrors buried within the walls of this house. But I would not back down. Not now, not ever. I grasped the locket tightly in my hand, the voices of the lost children urging me onward. filling me with strength. "What's hidden in this house?" I demanded, ready to face whatever darkness loomed ahead. Darkness surrounded me, hungry and waiting for my next move. It felt like the house was alive, and it was whispering secrets I had yet to uncover. I'd have to face whatever awaited in the depths, whatever horror lay in the mystery of this house. Every instinct told me to run, but I was not the frightened child who had first stepped into this house. I had become their beacon of hope, and I had to be strong. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and whispered to myself, "I will find the truth." The shadows shuddered around me, swirling faster, and I prepared to unveil the secrets of the house. I felt a connection building, a bond with the spirits wrapped in despair. I would solve the riddle that had haunted this place for so long, and come face to face with the darkness that wanted to keep me here forever. And so, I took that first step into the deeper shadows of the basement, ready to confront whatever horrors awaited me. At that moment, I realized that the true challenge was just beginning. I stepped deeper into the shadowy abyss, every instinct screaming for me to turn back. The air felt thicker, and each breath I took was heavy with a sense of mold and decay. Shadows twisted and flickered as I moved forward, making the dim light seem to stutter like a dying flame. My heart raced, pounding in my chest like a war drum, drumming out a rhythm of fear. As I carefully navigated the darkness, I saw forms shifting in the corners of my vision. They darted away whenever I turned, like whispers of smoke. I clenched the locket tighter, thinking of the children trapped within these walls. What had happened to them? What had they endured in this cursed place? I could almost hear their voices, urging me to keep going. Something caught my attention, a hint of a light flickering at the far end of the basement. I crept closer, curiosity blending with trepidation. The closer I got, the more I felt an icy chill seeping into my bones. Was it the light, or was it the darkness itself that was radiating cold? I couldn't tell. All I knew was that I had to uncover whatever secret lay ahead. As I neared the strange glow, I realized it came from an old lantern, perched precariously on a dusty shelf. It looked ancient and forgotten, its glass cracked but still glowing with a flicker of otherworldly light. I reached out to grab it, feeling the warmth radiate through my fingertips. But as I touched the lantern, the light vanished, plunging me into an even thicker darkness. "Not yet," a voice hissed from the shadows, sending a shiver racing down my spine. "You must not disturb what is not meant to be disturbed." Fear shot through me as I swung around, my heart racing. "Who's there?" I demanded, my voice trembling. "Show yourself." Silence engulfed me, but then I heard a soft weeping, a melody of despair echoing around the walls. I turned again, trying to find the source of the sound, but it felt like it was coming from everywhere and nowhere all at once. "Please don't cry," I begged into the shadowy void. "I'm here to help." Suddenly, the air shifted again, a gust whirling around me, carrying with it the faint scent of wet earth and decay. From the corner of my eye, I saw something flit past, the outline of a figure darting away into the depths of the basement. I hesitated, heart racing at the thought of following, but I couldn't shake the sense that I was getting closer to understanding their plight. With every ounce of courage I had left, I ventured deeper into the gloom, the echo of soft sobs guiding my steps. As I moved, the shadows shifted, like dark tendrils reaching for me. I could feel the cold brush of something against my skin, a warning to turn back. "Stay away!" I shouted, trying to rally what strength I had. But the spirits were insistent. "Remember," they cried, their voices intertwining with the darkness. "We are lost. The truth is hidden beneath the sorrow." I stumbled forward, trying to cut through the fear that threatened to consume me. I could almost see outlines of faces in the shadows, twisted and anguished, caught somewhere between this world and the next. Each step felt like an invitation to delve deeper into the unknown. The sobbing intensified, and something at the very edge of my perception beckoned me, promising answers. Ahead, I spotted a door, its wood warped and aged, littered with dark stains that looked like dry blood. My breath caught in my throat, Every instinct screamed to run, but I pressed on, convinced that whatever lay behind it was crucial to setting the spirits free. With trembling hands, I reached for the handle. It felt cold and unyielding under my palm. "Open it," the voices urged, a howl of hope and desperation filling the air around me. Finally, I gripped the handle and twisted. The door creaked open, revealing a narrow staircase leading down into an even darker chamber below. The cries pressed around me like a fog, swirling into an unsettling cacophony of lost voices. "Come," they beckoned. "Discover the truth." I took a shaky breath and descended the stairs, the wood groaning beneath my weight. Each step echoed in the silence, amplifying my heartbeat. The darkness enveloped me completely as the door creaked shut above, sealing me in this chilling embrace. A sense of dread settled over me, blending into an unsettling curiosity. At the bottom of the steps, I entered a room dimly lit by a single, flickering bulb hanging from the ceiling, swaying as if disturbed by an unseen force. The walls were lined with old, peeling wallpaper, and on the ground, remnants of toys and clothes lay scattered, echoes of lives left behind. I scanned the room, feeling like I had stumbled upon a forgotten sanctuary of sorrow. In one corner, a small cradle leaned precariously, the fabric stained and torn. I approached it, a heavy weight settling in my stomach. "What happened to you?" I whispered, memories of the children flooding my mind. Suddenly, I was hit with a wave of cold air, and the temperature dropped sharply. I turned sharply, sensing that I wasn't alone. "You shouldn't have come," the voice hissed again, sharper this time, sending a jolt of fear through me. "This place holds the weight of their torment." I could see outlines materializing from the shadows, figures emerging who looked desperate and lost. "Help us!" they cried out collectively. The air vibrated with their anguish, and I flinched, feeling claws of desperation wrap around my heart. "Please!" I shouted, eyes wide. "What do I need to do?" The figures slowly closed in, an air of expectation hanging in the thick atmosphere. One of the spirits stepped forward, a girl with hollowed cheeks and wide, sorrowful eyes. "You must face what has tied us here," she urged, her voice trembling. "The keeper of secrets is hidden in this room." I took a step back, dread creeping into my bones. What keeper? What secrets? The atmosphere pulsed with darkness, and the shadows flowed around me, inching in and suffocating any light that remained. I felt my breathing become shallow as their whispers grew frantic. "Uncover the truth, or be forever entwined in our despair." Heart pounding, I noticed an old trunk in the far corner. The wood was decayed and covered in cobwebs, but something deep inside urged me to approach it. This must be it, I thought, fear battling with determination. I staggered toward the trunk, feeling the air crackle with unease. As I knelt before it, I hesitated. What if this was the doorway to their everlasting torment? Swallowing hard, I grasped the rusty latch and pried it open, the creaking sound echoing ominously in the dead silence. Inside lay a jumble of belongings, a weathered journal, a doll, and what looked like a collection of old photographs. I pulled out the journal, the pages crumbling under my touch, and began to read. It detailed the lives of the children, hints of laughter and play interspersed with dark omens of dread. As I read further, anxiety began to rise in me when I discovered entries marked with fear. "We are not alone. There is something watching, something dark." The air grew thick, the shadows shifting as if alive. I could feel their eyes upon me, the specters of the children urging me onward. "The last entry," I whispered, my heart racing. "What happened?" The final words sent chills down my spine. "It took them. It's coming for us." Suddenly, the darkness exploded with a rush. The bulb flickered violently, and I saw the twisted figure of the keeper in the shadows, its face obscured, but its presence unmistakable. "You shouldn't have come," it shrieked, the sound piercing the dank air. I scrambled backward, clutching the journal tightly, my pulse racing in my ears. The spirits cried out, swirling around me, their voices rising in panic. "Help us! Confront it!" I felt as if I was trapped in a nightmare, the keeper of secrets lunging closer, rage emanating from it like a storm. "You will never escape," it howled, and the air crackled with its fury. But amidst the chaos, I realized something. I was the key to their destiny. I had to stand strong, to confront the darkness head-on. "What do you want from us?" I shouted, forcing my voice to stay steady. The figure paused, its movements faltering, the shadows around it flickering like a dying flame. "You think you can save them?" it hissed, a sneer etched in the corners of its mouth. "They belong to me." "No!" I screamed back, suddenly feeling a surge of bravery. "They deserve to be free. Your darkness can't hold them forever." The shadows roared, and the air vibrated with energy. An electric charge pulsed through the room, my skin prickling with every breath. I lifted the journal high, the light from the bulb flickering with intensity. "I have their truth," I declared, voice firm. "You can't keep them locked away." In that moment, the spirits surged around me, their energy mingling with mine. The air crackled with a blinding force, and I felt their presence, the strength of their hope igniting within me. "Face the truth," they cried in unison, a chorus that resonated through the room. "Together, we will end this darkness." The keeper recoiled, its rage seemingly deflated as my words clashed with its power. I could feel the weight of the journal, the history contained within it, pushing back against the shadow. "You can only hold them for so long," I shouted, my voice echoing with the spirit's energy. With one final push, I flung the journal forward, releasing the energy that had built up within me. The shadows writhed and screamed, pushed back by the force of their own buried truths. I could feel their shackles loosening, the darkness fleeing as light began to pour through the cracks in my fear. As the keeper shrieked in fury, I saw the spirits emerging from the shadows, their forms becoming more defined. The anguished faces of the children twisted with despair were softening, their hope igniting with newfound strength. "Help us remember," they pleaded again, their voices clear and united. "Help us break free." The room trembled as the keeper faltered, rage replaced by fear. I focused on the spirits, channeling their sorrow and courage, feeling them lift me. "Together," I yelled, uniting our energies. The shadows writhed violently, the keeper howling as the shadows broke away. Bright light flooded the room as the darkness was dismantled thread by thread, scattering like ashes in the wind. In that moment, I realized our combined strength could defeat the very darkness that sought to imprison us all. The keeper screeched, the sound erupting into a chaotic wail as it disintegrated before my eyes. As its power lifted, the shadows retreated, revealing the children's spirits, lovely and pure. Their faces glowed with gratitude, relief washing over them like rain after a drought. And then, amidst the soft glow, I felt my heart swell with purpose. I was no longer merely an outsider in this place. I was part of their journey, and together we would uncover the truth needed to free every soul captured in the darkness. But as I gazed at them, one question remained. What other secrets lurked within the walls of this house, waiting to be released? The air felt charged with energy, and I could sense that more lay hidden beneath the surface of this place. Something dark and powerful still clung to the corners of the room, as if it was waiting for the right moment to strike back. I took a shaky breath, glancing around at the remnants of sorrow that still filled the space. The children, their faces illuminated by the soft, warm light, glanced toward the far wall where the shadows seemed to cling the hardest. I felt an invisible pull toward that area, an instinct driving me to uncover whatever horrors remained. A low hum vibrated in the air, and I thought I caught whispers carried on the wind, beckoning me forward. Over there, one spirit urged, pointing with a delicate finger. There's more to uncover. I stepped cautiously, the floorboards creaking beneath my weight. Each sound echoed like a warning, and I couldn't shake the feeling that unseen eyes were watching me from beyond, studying my every move. The closer I got to the wall, the heavier the atmosphere became, thick with despair and anguish that hung like a shroud. As I approached, I noticed a series of wooden panels that looked different from the rest of the wall. They were darker, rougher, and seemed to pulsate with a life of their own. My heart raced as I reached out to touch one of the panels, feeling the cold wood against my fingertips. A chill ran through me, and I quickly pulled my hand back, swallowing hard. "What is behind here?" I whispered, half to myself, half to the spirits surrounding me. The wailing of the children filled the air, a symphony of fear and longing. "It's where we were kept," they murmured, eyes wide with remembrance. "We tried to escape. We thought we could." Their voices filled me with urgency, a burning need to uncover the truth hidden behind those walls. I searched for a way to pry them loose, and in that moment, I noticed a small latch in the corner, almost camouflaged against the wood. My heart raced with realization. This might be the key to what lay buried in this house. With trembling hands, I reached for the latch and pulled. It clicked open with a heavy thud, and the panels began to shift, revealing a darkened space behind the wall. Shadows spilled out, wrapping around my ankles like serpents, whispering promises of torment. The stench of rot hit me, a foul odor that clawed at my throat. My stomach churned, but I steeled myself, holding my breath as I peered into the abyss beyond. The light from the room flickered, casting eerie silhouettes on the walls. Inside the secret compartment lay a small room, its walls lined with faded photographs and tattered remnants of toys. They were remnants of lost joy, captured in time, but now shrouded in sorrow. The spirits hovered close, their faces pale with fear and longing. "Look," one of them cried, pointing to a photograph hanging crookedly on the wall. It showed a group of children, smiling, carefree, preserved in a moment of happiness. But a dark figure loomed behind them in the shadows, its features indistinct, yet there was something chilling about its presence. "What is that?" I whispered, my voice nearly drowned out by the chorus of anguished spirits. "It's him," the girl said, her voice shaking. "The keeper. He lured us in, made promises he never intended to keep." A shiver raced down my spine as I took in the figure's features, dark and twisted, almost blending into the shadows themselves. "What did he do to you?" I asked, my voice trembling with dread. "He played with our fears," she replied, her tears shimmering in the dim light. "He made us think we could find freedom, but it was a trap. We lost everything, the air around us thickened, and I realized I was standing on sacred ground, a painful reminder of lost lives and shattered dreams. "I have to stop him," I declared, the determination fueling me again. With a newfound resolve, I stepped further into the room, scanning the walls for anything that might help me understand how to fight this darkness. I reached a section where the wallpaper was torn, revealing what looked like a hidden panel beneath. My breath caught in my throat as I began to peel back the old remnants, uncovering symbols etched into the wood. They were crude but familiar, almost like hieroglyphs telling a story, one of entrapment and despair. As I traced the lines with my fingers, I felt a jolt of energy surge through me, like the spirits were infusing me with their strength. "What does this mean?" I whispered, hoping someone could guide me. "It's a barrier," a voice replied, echoing from the ethereal realm. "A seal he put in place to trap us. If you break it, you may free us once and for all." I glanced back at the remaining spirits, their eyes filled with hope. "How do I break the seal?" I asked, feeling the weight of their expectations resting on my shoulders. "Use the light," they whispered in unison, a chorus of resolute determination. "The very essence of truth shining against the darkness can undo the seal." Determined, I scanned the room for anything that could amplify the light. My gaze landed on the old lantern that had flickered moments before. I hurried back, grasping it tightly, my heart pounding with every beat. As I retrieved it, I felt the shadows retreat, almost as if they recognized the threat it posed. I positioned the lantern in the center of the small room, my hands shaking as I tried to ignite it once more. The air was charged with anticipation, and I drew in a deep breath. "Come on, please," I whispered, desperately willing the light to shine through the darkness. With a flick of the matches I'd found on the ground, I struck one, the small flame winking to life, dancing against the oppressive gloom. I held it to the lantern, and it caught, illuminating the walls with a warm glow that banished the shadows just enough for me to see the symbols clearer. As the brightness expanded, the symbols began to shimmer. I felt the energy coursing through me, surging like a river through the darkness. "You are no longer in control," I shouted as my voice echoed through the small chamber. The shadows writhed in protest, fighting against the light that was driving them back. "No," the keeper's voice yelled, laced with fury and desperation. "You cannot do this." But the light grew stronger, enveloping me in its warmth. I could feel the spirits gather around, their collective energy lifting my resolve higher. I pressed against the symbols with my free hand, feeling the power of their pain and suffering push through me. "Now!" I cried, releasing the light with every ounce of strength I had. The symbols flared, illuminating the room with blinding light, flooding into the dark crevices. A splintering sound echoed around me as the seal began to break, the oppressive weight in the room shattering like glass. The keeper screamed, a terrible, guttural sound that rang in my ears, tearing through the fabric of silence. "No more!" I shouted, feeling the power of my voice resonate through the air, drowning out the darkness. I could see tendrils of shadow disintegrating, curling beneath the light like smoke dissipating in the wind. The spirits swirled around me, their faces shifting from anguish to hope, and in that breaking moment, I felt a surge. I closed my eyes and concentrated, pushing harder against the darkness. "You cannot hold them," I declared, drawing in the strength of my newfound allies. The keeper's form began to distort, its rage twisting into fear as it felt the grip of its power slipping away. Desperate, it lunged toward me, a mass of despair hungry for the light. "You will regret this," it roared, but the force of the light grew stronger, pulsating like a heartbeat. With one final push, I broke the last of the seal. Light exploded from the lantern, flooding the room, bathing everything in overwhelming brightness. I felt the rush of the spirits lifting with me, their shackles shattering as they rose into the light, buoyed by hope and salvation. The keeper howled in desperation as the brightness engulfed it, the shadows disintegrating like ashes caught in a fierce wind. In that moment, I knew that I had freed them, not just from the darkness of this house, but from the torment that had twisted their spirits for far too long. As the last remnants of the keeper dissolved, the room fell silent, the air settling into an eerie calm. I opened my eyes slowly, reality sinking in. The children hovered close, their faces aglow with strength and fire. "Thank you," one whispered, her kindness shining through her tears. "You set us free." I could barely breathe as the weight of their gratitude washed over me. There was still so much left to understand, so many answers buried within the remnants of this place. Yet for now, the darkness had been conquered. But as I looked around the room, I knew deep down that this wasn't the end. There were still shadows lingering, layers of history waiting to be unearthed. Darkness could fade, but it never fully disappeared. I couldn't shake the feeling that more revelations awaited in the corners of this house. "Where do we go from here?" I asked, voice steadying as I felt the room shift with anticipation. The spirits exchanged glances, their joy infused with concern. "There are others, like us," one child said, his small voice breaking through the silence. "We need your help to find them." The weight of their words hung in the air so heavy. I realized my journey wasn't over. I couldn't leave them behind. "I will help you," I promised, determination igniting in my chest. "We will save them all." And as I stepped from the remnants of the room, leaving the seal behind, I felt the shadows shift around me, their whispers swirling as if sensing the promise I'd made. The journey ahead would be fraught with challenges, unraveling the dark secrets hidden in the corners of this house. But I was ready to face whatever lay ahead. Together with the spirits by my side, I would uncover the truth, exposing the anguish buried beneath, one layer at a time, to find the light that still flickered within the darkness. This was only the beginning, and as I stepped from the remnants of the room, leaving the seal behind, I felt the shadows shift around me, their whispers swirling as if sensing the promise I'd made. The air grew colder, a chill crawling across my skin, as if the house itself was trying to reclaim what I had taken from it. I glanced back, apprehension knotting in my stomach. The space I had just uncovered remained heavy, and an unnerving feeling washed over me. "Where to now?" I asked, looking into the eyes of the spirits, seeking their guidance as dread gripped me. "We must go deeper," said the girl, her voice like a breeze rustling through autumn leaves. "There are more like us, trapped in the bowels of this house." The keeper hid them well. Their words sent shivers down my spine, but I nodded, resolve bubbling inside me. Taking a deep breath, I moved toward the door that led to the hallway. Light flickered overhead, casting long shadows that danced in a way that felt almost mocking. With each step I took, the floorboards creaked painfully, echoing in the silence around me, like a warning whispering in my ear. As I walked further down the hallway, I could feel the air grow heavy, thick with an unshakable dread. My heart raced in my chest, matching the rhythm of the whispers that began to swirl around me once again. "Help us! Help us!" they cried, their tones filled with despair that seemed to float from every corner. I stumbled a little, trying to regain my composure as I pressed onward. Suddenly, a cold gust of wind rushed through me, slamming a door at the end of the corridor wide open. The sudden noise made me jump, my breath catching in my throat. I hesitated, staring into the inky darkness beyond the open door. An oily blackness loomed, swirling like smoke, and there was a faint rustle, a sound almost like something shifting inside, urging me forward while also warning me away. "Go!" the spirits urged, their voices bursting with urgency. I stepped closer, the pull of the darkness becoming almost magnetic, dragging me as my fear clashed with the determination to save those still trapped. Each step felt heavy as I crossed the threshold into the room beyond. The air thickened even more, wrapping around me like a cold, wet blanket. My skin prickled and I felt disoriented, like I was being drawn into a nightmare. The light from the hallway flickered and then faded, leaving me in an unsettling void, its grip becoming more pronounced with every passing moment. "What is this place?" I whispered, feeling my voice echo back at me, distorted and eerie. The walls were lined with shelves crammed full of dolls, their glassy eyes glinting in the dark. I recoiled as I felt their unblinking stares boring into me, expressions locked in pitiful grimaces. It was as if they were all witnesses to the horrors that occurred here, echoing the forgotten cries of the children hidden within these walls. My eyes caught a small, dusty mirror hanging crookedly on the wall, and I realized the reflections were distorted. Shadows flitted in the corners of the glass, twisting forms that seemed to beckon me closer. The temperature dropped even more, and I could see my breath in the cold air. "What's happening?" I mumbled, fear creeping in like vines curling around my mind. "Look closer," the girl said, her voice trembling yet filled with hope. Taking a tentative step forward, I gazed into the mirror. Instead of my reflection, I saw images flickering across the surface, memories intertwining with nightmares. Each scene was more horrifying than the last. Children shackled in the dark, screams muffled by despair, and twisted faces of the keeper shadowing them like a vulture. The atmosphere pulsed, and I could feel the darkness reaching out, pulling at my heartstrings, tugging on the fear buried deep within me. Suddenly, the mirror shattered with a sickening crack, the shards flying out and embedding into the wall like splintered teeth. A spine-chilling laughter erupted around me, echoing off the walls. I turned on my heel, eyes wide with terror, as a figure emerged from the shadows. It was the keeper, only now it was more formidable, its form a grotesque mass of shadows and malice, overflowing with a malevolence that sent tremors of fear through my very being. "You think you can save them?" it hissed, as the air around me thickened, making it hard to breathe. "You do not know what you're dealing with." The keeper's voice slithered through the darkness, wrapping around me like a serpent. I felt its wicked presence tightening, squeezing my resolve like a vice. "No!" I shouted, my voice breaking through the oppressive terror. "I won't let you win." The spirits surged around me, their presence rushing against the keeper, but it laughed, a low, hideous sound that reverberated in the silence. "You think your little candle can defeat me?" The shadows twitched and writhed, and I could feel the weight of its power suffocating me. "They belong to me. They will always belong to me." The spirits cried out, their voices overlapping in a chaotic symphony, and in this tempest of fear, I could feel their history intertwining with mine. Memories of their laughter, their joy, and their innocent dreams toppled over one another, igniting something deep within me. "Together," I urged, gripping the lantern in one hand as I faced the shadow. "We can overcome the darkness." With sweat streaming down my spine, I steadied myself and clutched the lantern close, drawing in every ounce of light it offered. "Together," I shouted again, and felt the spirits clustering tightly around me, their forms flickering like candle flames battling the night. The keeper shrieked, its form erupting in a tempest of rage, shadows clawing at the air. "You will pay for this insolence," it bellowed, but I thrust the lantern forward, a shield against the encroaching darkness. Light spilled from the lantern, pouring into the room like a flood, washing over dead objects and twisting shadows. The spirits circled around it, and I focused entirely on the memories swirling around us, brightening with each ounce of courage I drew from their collective fear and hope. The very walls of the room quaked as the keeper staggered under the light's intensity, its laughter turning into maniacal screams. "No, you cannot do this." In that moment of upheaval, the atmosphere crackled with electric energy. I knew I was tapping into something ancient, a force created in the remnants of lost lives. I pressed forward, the light blinding, piercing through the veil of shadows that had claimed this place for far too long. "Remember," I called out, urging the spirits to join their power with mine. "Remember the joy you once had. Use that to break free." The lantern burst to life, and suddenly the room exploded in bright luminescence. Shadows shrieked as they were consumed, frantically retreating under the combined force of our light. A deafening roar echoed through the hall, as the keeper's form cracked and shattered, splintering off pieces like a fragile shard of glass breaking apart. I could feel the spirits rising with me, their laughter dissolving into a chorus of freedom. "We are free," they shouted, as the darkness was engulfed in the living light, leaving nothing but remnants of sorrow in its wake. But as the echoes faded and the light began to dim, I stood there trembling. More remained unchallenged. A chilling realization hit me. The house still felt alive, thrumming with the energy of past secrets yet unearthed, waiting just beyond the threshold for someone to listen. "What now?" I whispered, looking to the spirits who clustered around me, faces glowing with newfound strength, yet bearing an urgency I couldn't ignore. There are still whispers in the dark. One whispered softly, a hint of sadness clouding their joy. "We must find them before they're lost forever." Fear mixed with determination in my heart. I wasn't done. I wouldn't turn my back on the shadows still lurking in this house. Together, we had already done the impossible, and I wouldn't let the darkness reclaim what it had lost. As we moved deeper into the house, a new dread began to settle. Although I had broken one seal, I sensed new horrors awaited, lurking in the depths, ready to test my resolve once more. Each step echoed with the promise of more secrets, and I steeled myself against the creeping unease that hinted at facing something far worse than I had imagined. This was only the beginning. Every part of the house seemed to grow darker as I stepped deeper into its ominous heart. The lantern flickered, casting long, jittery shadows that twisted around me like disoriented spirits trying to escape their memories. It felt as if the air itself thickened, pressing down on me, wrapping around my throat like a noose. I glanced back at the spirits, their translucent forms bright, yet tinged with dread. "There's a basement," one of them whispered, her voice fragile as the dust in the air. "We must go down. That's where he kept the others." I hesitated. The thought of descending into the bowels of this cursed place twisted my stomach into knots. "What's down there?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "More darkness," another spirit replied, shuddering as if recalling something awful. "But it's where the lost children are trapped. It's where the keeper draws his power." I nodded, heart pounding. "Then we have to find them." The spirits led me toward a door at the end of the hallway. Its wood warped and splintered, splattered with what appeared to be dried blood. I reached for the handle, hesitating just for a second, realizing then that this was a point of no return. Taking a deep breath, I turned the knob, feeling it resist for a moment before clicking open. As I stepped inside, I was greeted by a staircase that spiraled down into the darkness, each step seemingly oozing with the weight of despair. The air became cold, chilling my bones, and I could hear faint whispers, words I couldn't quite make out, drifting up from the abyss below. With every step down, the lingering light faded, swallowed by the blackness that loomed ahead. I swallowed hard, and the lantern felt heavier in my hand, but I pressed on. When I reached the bottom, I was met by a heavy wooden door, the wood rotting and covered in strange symbols etched deeply into the surface. "Is this it?" I asked, turning to the spirits floating beside me. They nodded, their faces somber. I reached for the door, and as my fingers grazed the cold surface, a jolt of energy shot through me. Suddenly, the temperature dropped further, each breath I took leaving a fog in the air. I pushed open the door with a groan, the creak echoing like a dying whisper, then stepped inside. The basement was surreal, an expansive space filled with shadows that seemed to ripple and twist around me. Broken toys lay strewn across the floor. Memories of laughter turned to echoes of despair. Old, dusty furniture sat shrouded in darkness, and the faint stench of decay hung heavy in the air. "Look!" one of the spirits cried, pointing toward a corner where flickering lights glimmered. I moved closer, the lantern illuminating what appeared to be a circle drawn in white chalk on the ground. A crude summoning circle surrounded by tarnished objects and forgotten remnants of dreams. As I squatted to examine it, the atmosphere shifted, the lights flickered violently, and the whispers intensified. I felt an ice-cold breath at my neck, and dread washed over me like a tide. Suddenly, a loud bang resonated, shaking the very foundation of the room. I jerked upright, heart racing, scanning the darkness as shadows danced angrily. In the chaos, I caught sight of them. Children, their frightened faces peering from behind broken furniture, eyes wide with terror. "Help us!" they cried in unison, their voices woven together in a haunting melody. The words struck a chord deep within me, pain mingling with determination. "Where is the keeper?" I shouted, but before any could answer, the lights in the basement flickered out completely. I felt the chilling darkness envelop me, a suffocating blanket that made it hard to breathe. My chest tightened with fear, and in that blackness, I heard the unmistakable sound of laughter, cruel and mocking, echoing off the walls like taunts from the abyss. I gripped the lantern tightly, its dim glow the only source of reassurance. Yet, the light wavered, flickering as if it sensed the overwhelming shadows pulling at its brightness. "No!" I gasped, "stay lit!" A sudden gust of wind swept through the basement, extinguishing the flame entirely. I was left in an impenetrable blackness, surrounded by whispers that wrapped around me like chains. My heart raced as I strained to hear anything familiar, the children's wails echoing in my mind, urging me to break free of the binding darkness. Then I felt it, a pull, a sinister weight anchoring around my ankles, tugging me backward. I fought against it, but the shadows grew stronger, wrapping tightly around me, weaving through my limbs like cold fingers. Panic surged through me, my breath quickening as I stumbled, my hands clawing desperately at the floor. "Fight it!" the spirits cried out, their voices fading into the chaos. "You can't let it take you." Summoning every ounce of willpower, I forced my eyes open, focusing on the faint memory of the lantern's light. "I will not be afraid," I shouted, the declaration ripping through the suffocating silence. In an act of sheer desperation, I threw myself forward, hands outstretched into the void. The darkness rippled and recoiled, releasing its grip. Just as I felt myself tipping over the edge, the lantern flared back to life, a fierce light radiating from within me. The shadows lunged at me, twisting and curling, desperate to engulf the light. But the intensity shot outwards, pushing against the darkness like waves crashing against the shore. "Stay back," I warned, my voice breaking. And in that moment, the true horrors of the basement began to unfold. Shapes darted behind the shadows, grotesque forms that shifted just out of view. I could see eyes glaring at me from every corner, filled with fury and anguish. The keeper's laughter echoed with a sinister glee, merging with the cries of the trapped children, and I felt a bone-deep chill grasp my heart. "Come play," the keeper taunted, its voice dripping with malice. "You're just like them, aren't you? Lost and confused in this dark place. Get away from them," I screamed, pressing forward despite the horror surrounding me. The spirits surged around me like a protective wave, their light mingling with my own, illuminating the space just enough for me to see clearly. Desperate faces peered out from the corners of the room, their mouths moving in silent pleas. I took a deep breath and thrust the lantern forward, a beacon of light cutting through the oppressive darkness. "We will break this curse," I shouted, feeling the energy coil around me, my heart pounding in rhythm with the strength I felt from the spirits. With every shuffle of the keeper's twisted form, I saw the silhouette of children reaching out, grasping with hope and fear. Fear drained out of me as I closed my eyes briefly, centering myself in the warmth of their collective anguish. Together, I shouted again, "We can break this darkness." The lantern flared brighter, illuminating the twisted shapes in the corners, revealing their forms. Tormented faces and outstretched hands yearning for freedom. "No more!" I cried. "You will not trap them again." The shadows writhed in agony, their screams filling the room. The keeper's figure began to distort, twisting and writhing, as if trying to maintain its form against the erupting light. "You think you can stop me?" it hissed, voice laced with venom. The children gathered close to me, their energy feeding into the lantern's light, lifting the oppressive gloom. "Help us," they echoed, and I felt their pain surge within me. The light splintered the shadows, illuminating forgotten spaces and pleadings lost to time. But just as hope surged, the keeper unleashed a wave of darkness so dense it knocked me to my knees. I gasped, the air thick like molasses, struggling to breathe against its weight. Screams bounced off the walls, and for a moment, panic threatened to swallow me whole. Was this truly it? Then I remembered their faces, frozen in fear, yearning for rescue. I couldn't give up now. Gritting my teeth, I clutched the lantern, forcing myself back to my feet. "Together!" I shouted, the energy blazing anew. As the light cut through the suffocating darkness, the keeper's form flickered wildly, its malevolence breaking like glass under pressure. "No!" it howled, and I could see the desperation clawing at its features. This was my chance. Just then, one of the children stepped forward, a spirit glowing brighter than the rest, her voice soft yet resolute. "Just as we are lost, he is too. He draws his power from our fear." Her words lit a fire inside me. "He feeds on us," I exclaimed, realizing the truth hidden in her voice. "We can't let him take any more." Drawing all my strength, I shouted, "You are nothing without our fear." The keeper shrieked in rage, shadows swirling in rebellion as I focused all my energy into the lantern. Light exploded outward, intertwining with the spirits, amplifying their strength. The room began to shake, and the darkness writhed like a wild animal cornered. In this incandescent glow, I forged beyond the shadows, feeling the spirits lift with me, their voices joining in a haunting chant that resonated throughout the basement. "We are free! We are free!" echoed louder and louder, permeating the darkness. The keeper screamed, a sound full of rage and desperation as the very walls began to tremble. I held firm, sending the lantern light crashing through the darkness, shattering the grotesque tendrils of shadow into a million brilliant fragments that glittered in the air. As the last of the darkness burst apart, I felt the ground tremble and crack. Shouldering the weight of their collective fear, I knew this wasn't just a battle. It was a reckoning. "Come on," I urged, flashing them a fierce smile as the walls began to splinter under the combined power of our light. "We can do this together." Just as the keeper tried to regroup, the spirits swirled into one radiant collective, their suffering igniting into a brilliant luminescence that flowed like water, surrounding me, eclipsing the remnants of darkness. In that dazzling light, I heard the sound of chains breaking and a chorus of joyful laughter rising above the chaos. The keeper's terrifying form imploded in on itself, vanishing back into the shadows it had once commanded. The darkness shuddered, passing with a final, spine-chilling wail. And then, silence. I stood there, panting, body trembling with exhaustion and relief, my heart racing as the spirits ascended, their silhouettes dissipating into gentle wisps of light. They turned, gazing back at me, happiness enveloping their once somber faces. "Thank you," they whispered in unison, a soothing melody that wrapped around my soul. "You freed us." Yet, in the stillness that followed, I felt an unsettling presence linger, a reminder that darkness can never fully be erased. The tension in the air remained thick, an unsolved riddle waiting at the edge of my awareness. "What comes next?" I asked, looking into the depths of the basement now cleared of spirits, yet still pulsating with the echoes of what endured. The remaining light dimmed slightly, and I sensed a new shift as the basement revealed its hidden layers, unearthing secrets that had long been buried, the remnants of torment and loss waiting to be uncovered. As I prepared to descend back into the unknown, I knew this fight was far from over. The shadows would always hunt the light, but I was ready to unearth every last remnant of pain hidden in the corners of the house. The remaining darkness had stories yet to be told. Breathless, I stood in this eerie silence, reality shifting beneath my feet. With the spirits gone, the basement loomed large around me, an expanse of shadows holding onto their secrets. I could feel a chill creeping in, the weight of what had transpired pressing heavily on my shoulders. Everything felt wrong. The very essence of the house was alive, as if anticipating my next move. Following the remnants of light, I turned my gaze to the walls. They were marked with something, a language of despair, etched by hands long lost to time. I stepped closer, squinting at the strange symbols carved into the wood, their intricacy hinting at a dark history that twisted deeper than I had imagined. Each stroke echoed a warning, a story of what had happened here, and I felt a pull drawing me into their narrative. As I examined the symbols, a low sound reverberated through the basement. Like distant thunder, a primal growl that seemed to shake the very structure of the house. I jerked back, heart racing. It came from beyond the far wall, an unsettling pulse that resonated through my bones. I could feel the air thickening, heavy with something sinister lurking just beyond sight. "What was that?" I whispered, the words slipping from my lips. With the lantern flickering weakly, I recognized I needed to probe deeper. The unease pooled in my stomach, a lead weight that threatened to ground me when I should be moving forward. Taking a deep breath, I stepped towards the far wall where the sound had originated. Moment by moment, the rhythmic thumping grew louder, fueling my fear and curiosity. I pressed my ear against the cold wooden surface, the vibrations echoing through the air like a heartbeat echoing alone in a place forgotten. As I leaned in closer, the warnings etched into the walls danced before my eyes, whispering remnants of truth I was not yet ready to comprehend. Suddenly, A sharp crack echoed, splitting the silence as a large piece of the wall splintered open, revealing a hidden space behind it. Dust poured out like a thick fog, and I recoiled, heart racing uncontrollably. The darkness within seemed to pulse, inviting and threatening all at once. Restless shadows writhed in that small opening, and I felt a magnetic pull toward the yawning void. "Don't!" A voice inside me cried out, but the urge pushed me closer to investigate. I could feel my heart thrumming in sync with whatever hid beyond that crack. Desperate curiosity wrestled against raw fear. With shaky hands, I stepped forward, gently brushing away the debris. The space widened, revealing a narrow crawl space that descended deeper into the unknown. Cold air rushed up, smelling of damp earth and despair. Every instinct told me this was wrong, yet something compelled me to enter. I crouched low, squeezing through the opening and into the darkness beyond. As I crawled, the thumping grew louder, reverberating through my chest and rattling my bones. My fingers brushed against rough stones, slick with moisture, and an increasing sense of dread washed over me. I pushed forward, each movement echoing in the suffocating silence. The only sound was the rushing of my breath and that relentless, haunting beat that seemed to weave through the very fabric of this place. Finally, I emerged into a small chamber, the walls lined with rough stone, damp and dripping with moisture. In the center lay something covered by a tattered cloth, the outline of its shape distorted in the flickering lantern light. The thumping had stopped, replaced by an eerie stillness, tension suffocating the air. "Just look," I whispered to myself, forcing my feet to move closer. My heart raced wildly, anticipation mingling with a primal fear. What lay beneath that fabric? As I reached out, the lantern flickered unexpectedly, casting long shadows that danced across the walls, mocking my resolve. With trembling hands, I lifted the edge of the cloth. The fabric fell away easily, revealing a wooden box, ancient and covered in symbols similar to those etched into the walls above. The box was aged, its surface worn smooth, and I caught my breath as an unnatural chill seemed to radiate from it. Driven by a mix of dread and fascination, I eased the box open. The creaking of the lid echoed in the silence, sharp and sudden, like the voice of the house itself protesting against the disturbance. Inside, I found not gold nor trinkets, but a collection of old, brittle papers. One by one, I sifted through them, hands shaking as I unfolded each page. The papers were scattered notes, desperate pleadings of bygone victims. Stories of lost children, written in shaky hands, their final thoughts spilling out onto the page. I can still hear him, one noted, ink running like tears across the paper. He waits in the shadows, collecting souls. A cold shiver raced down my spine. The voices finally had flesh, and their stories echoed painfully in the hollow of my chest. I flipped the pages one by one, my pulse quickening with each word. "We made a mistake," another warned. "The darkness is alive. It feeds." Then I froze, the last page grasping my attention, hanging precariously by just a thread. It bore the symbol of the keeper, and writing below, it twisted into frenzied scrawls. "He is coming," it warned, "and he will take what is his." Suddenly, a weight pressed down upon me. It felt like the very darkness I had battled against was seeping back into this space, coiling around my body, pulling at my limbs. I staggered back, the lantern flickering, a desperate gasp escaping my lips. "No!" I cried, scrambling to my feet. I had come too far, uncovered too much. The thought of facing the keeper again ignited a visceral fear, clawing at my insides. I needed to escape. As I turned to flee, the air thickened, sending tendrils of darkness snaking around my ankles and legs, dragging me back down toward the unseen depths. I fought against it, feeling the grip tighten, yanking me towards the center of the room. "Let go!" I yelled, my voice echoing harshly against the stone walls. But the shadows only pressed in closer, filling the chamber with whispers, tortured cries seeping from the very stones. I felt something brush against my leg, a cold, clammy hand that sent waves of panic ricocheting through me. I struggled to break free, tearing my gaze from the grotesque shapes that twisted within the shadows. With a surge of adrenaline, I summoned all that remained of the lantern's light, pressing forward against the encroaching gloom. "You will not take me," I shouted defiantly, reaching for the remnants of hope that shimmered in the dim chamber. The lantern flared to life, driving back the shadows momentarily. And in that fleeting moment, I noticed a door behind the box, its edges barely visible in the thick darkness. The necessity to escape surged within me like a wildfire, and I sprinted for the door, feeling the darkness clawing at my back. The shadows shrieked in fury as I pushed against the door, and it gave way, leading into another narrow corridor. This new passageway twisted downward into the earth, the air growing heavy with an almost tangible fear as darkness engulfed me. I stumbled as I ran, desperate to outrun the shadows that nipped at my heels. Each beat of my heart echoed in my ears, intertwining with the frantic chorus of whispers that filled the air. "Help us," they moaned, familiar voices now twisted, distorted into something haunting. "Don't leave us! Help us!" I fell against the wall, breathless, the sound of my own pulse thundering in my throat. I pressed my back against the cool stone, closing my eyes to block out the awful cacophony of sorrow swirling around me. But in that darkness, I felt it again, a presence lurking just behind me. The need to turn and face it clawed at my mind, terror and curiosity tantalizingly entwined. Whatever lay beyond wanted me to look. I knew this, a truth etched deep in my bones. But I held firm, focusing on the light of the lantern, its faint glow fighting against the pressing darkness, pushing the fear away as best as I could. Forward. I had to move forward. I turned and fled down the corridor, the whispers trailing me, tugging at my consciousness. The door swung shut behind me, sealing away the horrors I had escaped, but I could feel the shadows gathering force, ready to pursue. The passage curled downward like a serpent, twisting and bending, leading me deeper into the house's malevolent embrace. The air grew thick with decay, and I could hear drips echoing like slow, morbid heartbeats. Each step felt like a step into an unknown abyss, my mind racing with the possibilities of what awaited me. Suddenly, I stumbled upon a massive room, and as I crossed the threshold, the lantern flared brightly, illuminating the vastness before me. But the light revealed nothing welcoming. The walls were cloaked in tattered, darkened fabric, the air filled with a power that was undeniable. In the center stood an altar, stained with age and shadow, surrounded by a circle of darkness that pulsed like a heartbeat of the house itself. I froze, the realization dawning on me. This room felt like the heart of the darkness, a sacred chamber of lost souls and powerful evils bound by ancient ties. And on the altar lay a mirror, its surface dark, reflecting nothing but the faint glow of the lantern. The urge to look into it surged again, the whispers beckoning me closer. "What is happening?" I thought, teeth gritting against the overwhelming fear pressing in from all sides. With every instinct honed by panic, I stepped toward the altar, searching for some clue, some piece of truth. "I can do this," I muttered, forcing my feet forward. "I have to find a way to end this." The echoing whispers climbed to a fever pitch, and as I reached the mirror, shadows swirled, curling and hissing like snakes preparing to strike. "Look," they beckoned, voices now no longer familiar, but promising in a way that unsettled me. "See the truth of your fears." Against my better judgment, I leaned closer, the lantern's glow distorted against the dark, murky surface of the mirror. A swirling image began to take form, then morphed into faces I recognized. Children whose cries had haunted me, lost souls, their mouths contorted in despair. What I didn't expect, however, was to see myself in the reflection, trapped within that endless cycle of sorrow, my own despair etched into that darkness. I gasped, stumbling backward. The mirror pulsed, the darkness alive with whispers, reaching out for me like grasping hands. "Join us," a voice rippled through the chamber, seductive and chilling. Your fear is our strength. No! I screamed aloud, the sound jagged and raw in my throat. The lantern flickered dangerously low, shadows looming ever closer, urging me to succumb to their promises. In that terrifying moment, I made a decision. I would not let this darkness defeat me. With a scream that pierced the suffocating silence, I raised the lantern high, focusing all my energy into it. "You have no power over me," I shouted, the words exploding with defiance. The light erupted, brighter than ever before, washing over the room like a tidal wave, consuming the shadows and striking against the mirror. The faces within twisted and wailed, the ethereal pain igniting the air as darkness splintered and shattered. Against light. But just as victory seemed within reach, a malicious laughter echoed around me. The keeper returned with a vengeance, rage now palpable. "You think you can escape?" It bellowed, dark tendrils shooting outwards, coiling threateningly around me. "No!" I roared, channeling every ounce of light I had left. "This ends now." With strength I didn't know I possessed, I pushed against the encroaching shadows, the lantern flaring, expanding until it enveloped everything in a brilliant blaze. The keeper shrieked, its dark form dissolving beneath the intensity of our collective light. In a final, desperate attempt, the shadows cracked, swirling around us like a tempest. I felt a tide lift me, the very heart of the darkness raging against its confinement. "Release us," the shadows screamed, thrumming around me, desperate and broken. And just as the light surged forth one last time, illuminating every corner of the room, I realized this fight was not only for my survival, but for everyone lost within these walls. I closed my eyes and surrendered to the light. As I felt the shadows shatter and explode, I whispered one last hope. "I will not let you consume any more souls." With that, the world around me erupted in an explosion of light. The brightness swallowed the darkness, a blinding flash that consumed every shadow in its path. The light felt alive, swirling with a fierce energy, tossing the remnants of despair to the edges of the room. For a moment, I was suspended in a world without fear, a weightlessness that made me feel euphoric and terrified all at once. But as quickly as it came, that feeling waned. The light began to dim, flickering erratically, and I sensed a shift in the air, thickening, pulsating like the heartbeat of something monstrous. I realized the darkness wasn't vanquished yet. It simply morphed, coiling at the edges of the room like smoke that refused to be extinguished. Breathing heavily, I scanned the chamber, desperate for an exit. The altar had cracked slightly, as if the violent surge from the light had rattled its foundation. Shadows pooled in the corners, looming ominously, their tendrils reaching out like fingers of a cold and grasping hand. The haunting laughter echoed again, closer now, filled with fury and malice. "Foolish child," it hissed, the voice slippery and cold. "You think you can defeat me? I was born from fear, and fear is eternal." The walls trembled with its words, the very stones vibrating with an ancient power that chilled me to the bone. I tightened my grip on the lantern, its light wavering, casting jagged shadows around the room, but I refused to let it falter. The flickering flame inside was all that stood between me and the consuming darkness. I turned, searching for a way out, when suddenly, from the depths of the shadows, figures began to emerge, twisted shapes of those who had been lost to this darkness, eyes downcast, their faces gaunt and filled with despair. They floated closer, wailing softly, their voices an eerie melody of sorrow. "Help us," they pleaded, their eyes hollow, pleading for salvation. "Don't listen to them," the keeper screeched, its form writhing in fury. "They are nothing but memories, trapped forever in my domain. You're next." The shadows twisted and surged like a storm, pooling around my feet, dragging at me with a palpable hunger. My heart raced, each beat echoing in the cavernous space of the chamber. I could feel the darkness climbing higher, reaching for me, each tendril cold against my skin. "Get back!" I shouted, thrusting the lantern forward as if it were a weapon. The light flared in response, creating a small but protective bubble around me. But the figures wouldn't retreat. Instead, they pressed forward, desperate and lost. "Please, don't let it take you. Don't let it devour your light," one whispered, the words cracking like shattered glass. "You can escape, break the cycle." I felt their anguish pierce through my resolve, and for a moment, I hesitated. But that hesitation was all the darkness needed. In a fit of rage, the keeper unleashed a surge of shadow that enveloped the room, swallowing the flickering light and dimming my vision. Suddenly, I was plunged into a chill that pierced through every layer of warmth in my body. The whispers crescendoed, the cries morphing into shrieks of despair. It felt like the very essence of darkness was clawing its way inside, dragging me down into its cold embrace. I stumbled backward, fighting against a force that sought to pull me into its depths, the lantern slipping from my fingers. I managed to catch it before it fell, but my grip was weak. The weight of the shadows pressed down on me, suffocating and relentless. They wrapped around me like a shroud, intent on silencing my light. Just then, a vision flickered in my mind, a memory of the children, their faces bright with hope, their laughter echoing through my consciousness. "They need you to shine," I thought, reminding myself why I was here and that I couldn't allow their suffering to continue. I focused on their light, visualizing it burning brightly within me. "You will not take me," I screamed, pouring every ounce of my energy into the lantern. As I did, the shadows recoiled slightly, their grip faltering. The moment of hesitation gave me strength, reigniting my determination. How dare they try to claim me as they had done to so many before? I refused to be afraid. I shouted with all my might, and the lantern burst forth with a surge of blinding brilliance. The light shattered the shadows, forcing them back, and I seized the moment, pushing through the swirling mass, my path illuminated with fury and hope. Exhilaration coursed through me as I raced toward the far wall, my heartbeat pounding in my ears like a war drum. I could hear the keeper's enraged howling, its form flailing against the overwhelming light that fought against it. "Your strength is nothing," it growled, but now its confidence wavered. I could feel it. The shadows were no longer a solid mass. They flickered, a chaotic storm struggling against my burgeoning light. I had to find a way to banish it once and for all. As I approached the wall, I caught sight of the carved symbols, my fingers brushing over them, whispering their names frantically. I could feel the energy thrumming beneath my touch, urging me to act. The figures of the lost lingered in the backdrop, their hollow eyes watching, waiting for a chance to break free. "Together," I cried out, channeling all my light into the symbols, envisioning each one as a beacon of hope. "I release you." The lantern pulsed, the light ballooning around me. One by one, the symbols began to shine, radiating a warm glow that chased the shadows back into their corners. For a moment, the chamber turned into a kaleidoscope of light and darkness, the clash illuminating the sorrow of shattered souls. And just then, a terrifying roar echoed throughout the room, the keeper rearing its dark form in a final attempt to reclaim its power. "This is my domain. Your light will not save you." But I pushed harder, sweat trickling down my brow as I shouted every word I could remember from the anguished notes. "You have no power here. Your reign of fear ends now." The symbols blazed more brightly, the light exploding outward like a supernova, illuminating every crevice of the chamber. Shadows disintegrated under its wrath, shrieking in horrified disbelief. I could feel the pull of the darkness weakening, fraying at the edges, revealing glimpses of the truth long buried beneath. A path to escape this cursed place began to unfold before me, glimmering like a promise. Yet in the distance, I could still hear the most haunted wails rising above the chaos, growing desperate, pleading for mercy. The resonance of their cries sent chills crawling up my spine as if they were clutching at my heart. It was a reminder of the very things I had come here to fight, But fear twisted against me, clawing into my resolve, trying to paralyze me with doubt. "Help us," echoed in my mind, the lost souls seeking more than just light. They craved justice, freedom from the clutches of despair that had bound them for so long. "Stay with me," I called out into the void, desperation threading my voice. "We can break free. I promise." I felt their collective strength surge at my words. It filled the air with a palpable energy as they began to coalesce around me, the darkness pulling back as if in response to their cries. But the keeper howled in rage, the shadows writhing and lunging out in an attack, desperate to reclaim its hold. "You'll pay for this," it hissed, a dark torrent edging toward me. "Not today." With a fierce shout, I unleashed the full power of the light, channeling their voices, their stories, and their wills into the symbols. "You will release them." The light shot forth like a spear, hitting the heart of the darkness, exploding into tendrils of radiant energy that compacted into a beam of pure illumination. The keeper shrieked, the sound vibrating through the very foundation of the chamber as the darkness shrunk back from the onslaught. "Help us," came the echoes again, now growing stronger as the light gathered momentum, illuminating the faces of the lost all at once. The keeper writhed against the attack, its cries filled with terror now, and I felt a surge of hope igniting within me. The veil was lifting, a crescent of light forming at the center of the chaos. Every lost child's face flickered before my eyes, their innocence lost and their spirits heavy with grief. In that moment, I knew what I had to do. I couldn't just fight for myself. I had to fight for them all. Their pain was not just a memory. It was my fuel, a fire igniting the determination burning within me. The chamber shook, vibrations coursing through the stones beneath my feet as I stood grounded, resolute. I thrust my arm forward, the lantern blazing bright. "You are free," I roared, feeling the fear leave my body as the light consumed the darkness in a brilliant explosion. And just like that, the shadows shattered, exploding outward in a blinding flash that left me momentarily deafened. I felt the moisture evaporate from the air, the warmth and security wrapping around me as a powerful wave washed over me, collecting each lost soul. The cries shifted into something else altogether. Joy, laughter, as I watched the figures begin to dissolve into shimmering particles of light, their faces softening as they were freed from whatever chains bound them. "You did it," one of the children cried, their voice clear as bell chimes, resonating through the air. "You helped us." As the last remnants of darkness fled, I stood amidst the stillness, heart racing in exhilaration, feeling their gratitude wrap around me like a protective cloak. The altar glowed softly, the symbols now radiant, infused with their stories, a reminder of everything I had fought against and everything I had saved. But the echoes of the keeper's rage still lingered, a dark shadow lurking at the edges of my awareness. Not finished, I thought, unease creeping back in as I turned to face the remnants of the space. The chamber felt different now, imbued with an energy that hummed with life, but the remnants of that darkness still clung to the recesses of the walls. Even as the spirits had risen, I sensed the remnants of the keeper, its power not fully extinguished, just biding its time, waiting for a moment to reclaim what it had lost. I could almost feel its breath on my neck, a chilling reminder that the battle would continue. "No more running," I whispered to myself, squaring my shoulders, determined to confront whatever threat still lurked in the shadows. "I won't let you take anyone else." With newfound courage, I stepped away from the altar, the air crackling with possibility, as I plunged deeper into the heart of the house, prepared for whatever horrors awaited. The house held its breath, waiting to see who would rise victorious. As I moved cautiously through the thickening darkness, the corridor twisted and turned with a sinister familiarity. Shadows flickered at the edges of my vision, whispering memories of fear and despair, as if they were eager to taunt me. The floorboards creaked under my weight, each sound amplifying the tension that gripped my heart. My breath caught in my throat, and I pressed on, focusing on the flickering light of my lantern, willing it to guide me through this maze of nightmares. Suddenly, an overwhelming chill swept through the corridor, wrapping around me like icy fingers. It felt as if the very walls were closing in, breathing heavily, suffocating me under a weight of dread. I paused, eyes darting to the dark corners, the shadows swirling ominously as if alive. "What is it?" I murmured to myself, forcing my feet to move even as the feeling of being watched intensified. In the dim light, I caught glimpses of something shifting, a figure draped in shadow, hovering just beyond sight. My pulse quickened, adrenaline coursing through me like fire. "Show yourself," I shouted, defiance coating my words, though fear rang hollow deep within me. The figure shifted, and its outline became clearer. An elongated face, thin and gaunt, its eyes sunken and black, drawing me in with an unsettling allure. I felt a tug in my chest as it glided closer, lifting an arm as if to beckon me forward. "Come closer," the figure whispered, its voice soft but laced with an eerie echo that crawled beneath my skin. Every instinct screamed at me to turn and run, but something deep inside urged me to stay, to confront whatever this thing was. "What do you want?" I asked, struggling to keep my voice steady. The air thickened, and I felt as though I was standing on the precipice of a great chasm, the darkness below stirring with ancient secrets. "Join us," it hissed, a horrible grin spreading across its hollow face, revealing rows of sharp, jagged teeth. "You have freed them, but you cannot escape what exists within you. The fear, the sadness, it calls to us." As it spoke, memories surged through my mind, moments of pain, loss, and fear. I saw the faces of those I had lost, their gazes filled with sorrow and blame. The darkness around me intensified, shape-shifting and morphing into familiar forms, phantoms of my past dancing just out of reach. "No!" I shouted, shaking my head as if to dispel the vision. "I am not afraid of you." But doubt snaked through my heart, and I took a step back, faltering under the weight of its gaze. The figure reacted immediately, lunging toward me, its form twisting and contorting. "Your light is weak," it screeched, the voice transforming into a cacophony of anguished wails, haunting and merciless. The shadows thickened, swirling and charging at me, seeking to engulf me in their dark embrace. Out of sheer desperation, I raised the lantern, forcing the light to shine brighter, carving through the suffocating darkness. "Get away from me!" I cried, but the shadows dove at me, claws of despair attempting to drag me into the void. I felt the coldness press against my skin, and each second felt like a battle for survival. The lantern flickered, the flame struggling against the tide of darkness. I gritted my teeth, focusing every bit of strength I had left into maintaining the light, my own heart pounding a rhythm of defiance. Suddenly the whispers shifted. "You cannot fight fate," they cried, voices intertwining, rising into a deafening chorus. "You must accept your destiny." The shadows spiraled around me, pressing tighter, and I felt my resolve beginning to falter. In the chaos, I remembered the faces of those who had once been lost, the children freed by my light. Their anticipation swirled within me, filling the cracks in my heart with fierce determination. I was fighting not just for my own survival, but also for those who had suffered, who had been trapped in this nightmare. "Shut up!" I yelled, pouring everything I had into the beam of the lantern. "You will not take me. You will not take anyone." The light surged, pushing back against the darkness, as if eliciting a scream from the very essence of fear around me. But darkness fought back. The keeper's presence loomed stronger. I felt its anger vibrating against the walls, resonating deep within my bones. "You are going to regret this," it roared, and from the depths of the shadows, tendrils lashed out, striking hard at my defenses. Suddenly, the shadows twisted around me, forming a vortex that lifted me off the ground, spinning me into a world of darkness where hope seemed utterly lost. Panic surged as I struggled against the encroaching void, the weight of despair too heavy to bear. All at once, the lantern sputtered, the flame flickering dangerously low. "No, no, please," I begged, frantic now. I felt the dark presence coiling around my throat, closing in like a noose, threatening to drag me into despair's grasp. But in that moment of near hopelessness, a surge of warmth flooded through me. I remembered the feeling of unity I shared with the lost souls, the collective strength that we had weaved together. "No!" I shouted, summoning every ounce of their energy within me. "You cannot have me." The lantern flickered once more, and with renewed force, I thrust it forward, unleashing a radiant beam that shattered the swirling darkness. The shadows howled, shrieking in agony as they were cast back. The vortex imploded, and I was thrown to the ground, gasping for breath as the light exploded outward like a supernova, engulfing the chamber. Yet, even as the shadows faded, a remnant lingered. I could feel the keeper's seething rage, burning like a coal at the edge of my consciousness. "You cannot break me," it spat, its anger crackling in the air, echoing incessantly around me. I knelt on the cool stone floor, trying to catch my breath, scanning the chamber for any sign of the figure. But the air was still, save for whispers of the souls around me. I could feel their gratitude, a soothing presence that wrapped around my heart. But I knew this wasn't over. The darkness would return, and I needed to be prepared. Looking around the room, I noticed remnants of the altar still glimmering, symbols etched into the stone, pulsing softly with the remnants of light. Maybe I can use these, I thought, rushing to the altar, determination propelling me forward. As I touched the symbols, I could feel their energy surging back, binding with my own. "Together, we can fight this," the keeper's voice echoed once more, teasingly. "You think you can win this dance? You are merely delaying the inevitable." But I wouldn't hear it. I drew strength from the very walls around me, concentrating on the feelings of hope and safety, and just like that, a plan began to form. "I need to find the source," I whispered to myself, committing to this newfound path. Then, summoning the last of my courage, I pressed deeper into the shadows, the lantern steady in my grasp, resolve burning brightly in my chest. Each step felt like I was walking on the edge of a blade, the quiet whispers stalking my every move. The air thrummed with pulsating energy, and visions flickered in and out of my mind, taunting me with memories of what had once been and what could still be. As I traversed the hallway, the darkness began to shift again, thickening ominously, coiling like a live serpent. In the distance, I could hear something, a rhythmic pounding, beating like a drum, growing louder with each step I took. Whatever lay ahead emanated a primal fear, as if it could sense my approach. A door loomed at the end of the corridor, darkwood splintered and ancient, adorned with carvings of twisted figures. They seemed to writhe and scream as I drew closer, the images coming to life in my mind, warning me of the horror that awaited. "This is it," I said quietly, heart racing. I placed my hand against the door, and a jolt of cold ran through me. The pounding grew deafening, a chaotic heartbeat thrumming in time with my own. It felt as if the house was alive, watching, waiting to see what would happen next. Gathering the last remnants of my courage, I pushed the door open, the creaking sound echoing like a funeral dirge. As the door swung wide, the room beyond was shrouded in thick shadows, flickering with ghostly light. A massive figure stood in the center, cloaked in darkness, a swirling mass of the lost souls swirling around it, their faces contorted in anguish, pleading for peace. The keeper loomed larger than life, its form almost too vast to comprehend, its voice booming like thunder as it turned to face me. "Welcome to my domain," it snarled, its eyes piercing through the dark. "You think you can challenge the very essence of fear? You are merely a flicker in the void." The souls writhed around it, their whispers rising to a frenzied pitch, echoing in chaotic harmony. I felt the pull of their despair again, a darkness that tugged at my heart. But alongside their sorrow, I could feel something else: resilience. "I will end this," I declared, the weight of determination settling heavily in my chest. You will not take any more souls. With that vow echoing in my mind, I raised the lantern high, its light cutting through the shadows like a blade of pure hope. The room erupted in noise as the keeper charged forward, the shadows coiling and contorting, ready to rip me apart. But I stood my ground. For every soul you've taken, I will shine brighter. The light surged, pushing forth, colliding with the dark figure attempting to swallow me whole. The moment our powers met, a blast of energy erupted, sending shockwaves through the chamber. I could feel the very soul of the house tremble, struggling against the intense collision of light and dark, battling for control. I closed my eyes and concentrated, feeling the warmth of the lost souls, their hope intertwining with my own. I'm not alone, I whispered into the chaos, a mantra that ignited a surge of power within me. Something cracked between us, the keeper's form beginning to fragment under the intensity of our combined energies. No, it shrieked, its voice rippling with fury and disbelief. The lantern flared brighter than ever, blinding in its brilliance, illuminating every twisted corner of the room, as the ground beneath us trembled with a force it couldn't contain. I pushed forward, pouring every ounce of energy I had left into the fight, the lost souls rallying around me, encouraging me. In a final, desperate attempt, I lunged toward the keeper, the light surging in a brilliant burst. I could see its dark, gnarled face contorting into a mask of rage and fear. And in that moment, I knew I could break the cycle. "Your reign ends here," I shouted, unleashing a wave of luminescence that enveloped everything in its path. Shadows spiraled and shattered the cries of lost souls mingling with the roar of the keeper's fury, delivering a final blow that resonated through the entire chamber. As the darkness imploded, I felt a surge of euphoria. The keeper's final scream cut through the air, filled with terror and defeat, before it was ripped away, devoured by the light. The room trembled and shattered around me, like a dream unraveling at dawn. Light engulfed me completely, and for a moment, I was weightless, free, surrounded by a brilliant glow that dispelled every lingering whisper of despair. I felt the warmth of the souls lifting, their presence a soothing embrace that filled the emptiness within. As the brilliance faded, I found myself standing in the center of the now illuminated chamber, bathed in a soft, golden glow. The shadows had withered away, leaving only a gentle light in their wake. The air felt lighter, filled with the sound of soft laughter, the joy of souls finally free from their chains. I could finally breathe without the heaviness of dread stifling my chest. The figures of those I had rescued lingered near me, their faces bright with gratitude and relief. "Thank you," they whispered in unison, voices blending into a melody that painted the air with warmth. As I looked around, the chamber transformed before my eyes, shifting and reshaping into something beautiful, radiant, a testament to the battle fought and won. It was no longer a place of sorrow, but rather a sanctuary of light, a beacon for the lost. Yet with every heartbeat, a nagging dread settled in my gut. Suddenly, the warmth around me began to flicker, the gentle glow vibrating like a heartbeat out of sync. I turned slowly, scanning the chamber for any sign of what might be lurking in the shadows. The joy of the souls seemed to wane, their laughter morphing into something softer, quieter, and I felt a cold gust of wind sweep through, stirring the remnants of darkness still clinging to the corners. I took a step back, all happiness fading, replaced with an unsettling feeling that I had not yet escaped. Something still lurked, waiting for the right moment to pounce. A shadow danced at the periphery of my vision, twisting and morphing, refusing to be banished. "Is anyone there?" I called out, my voice brittle in the stillness. The walls echoed my question, a hollow sound that felt like a warning. The air grew heavy, thickening with tension, as if the house itself held its breath. I could sense the presence coiling in the depths, just beyond the reach of the light, a feeling of malice oozing like poison. Then, From the shadows, a whisper emerged, slithering through the silence. "You think you've won, but I am eternal." The voice was guttural, echoing with dark promises that sent chills racing along my spine. I felt the temperature drop sharply, the air growing frigid as if winter had seeped through the very stones. "Who are you?" I demanded, forcing the tremor from my voice. My heart thudded painfully against my ribs, but I couldn't let fear consume me again. The remnants of the keeper's darkness loomed large in my mind. I was still caught in a web of its influence, prey to its lingering rage. Just a shadow, a whisper of what was, it hissed, the voice wrapping around me like smoke. "But you have roused something deeper. In trying to set them free, you've awakened me." Suddenly, the room felt right, but there was an absence of safety. I stumbled back, gripping the lantern tightly, its light flickering like a candle caught in a storm. Despite its glow, shadows twisted closer, eager to climb over the warriors of light I had summoned. They seemed to wriggle like worms, hungry for the light that shone too brightly in their presence. In that moment of revelation, terror gripped my chest as the realization hit me. My fight was not yet over. The keeper had become something more, an umbrella of horrors threatening to envelop me once again. Defiance surged inside me. "Your darkness will never win," I shouted, trying to project confidence I didn't feel. But a low rumble pulsated through the floor, shaking my resolve as the very foundation of the house seemed to tremble underfoot. A dark figure slowly emerged from the shadows, its features hidden but palpable, a twisted amalgamation of all the pain I had battled against. It towered, obscured, its presence stretching like a dark sun, making it impossible to look away. "What did you say?" it growled, each word dripping with disdain. "Your pathetic light is nothing to me, just another flicker waiting to be snuffed out. Come, let us play." The shadows danced around it, creating a surreal spectacle of horror. A symphony of lost souls turned violent, cries of anguish pleading from dimly illuminated faces. In that chaos, I felt my grounding shift, like the floor beneath was transforming into quicksand, pulling me deeper into despair. The brightness of my lantern faltered, as though the shadows were siphoning its strength. Panic gripped me, and my hands trembled as I clutched it tighter, trying to summon the light from within. "Enough!" I screamed, channeling every bit of courage I could muster. I focused on the lantern, on the bond one shared with the souls, those who had trusted me, believing I would set them free. Together, we will banish you once and for all. In response, the figure lunged forward, shadows reaching for me, hungry and vile. I felt the burst of cold air as they wrapped around my ankles, tugging me toward the dark depths. I gritted my teeth and leaped backward, adrenaline surging through my veins. Desperation fueled my movements. I swung the lantern, its light arcing through the air like lightning. For a moment, everything seemed to pause, the darkness recoiling, hesitant in the face of my defiance. I could hear the whispers of the souls rising, encouraging me, wrapping around my heart like threads of hope. But the shadows retreated only briefly, their hunger deepening. With a blood-curdling growl, the figure surged forward, its form glistening with darkness, stretching out like claws. "You will not escape me again," it hissed, a shrill tone slicing through the thick air as it lunged toward me. As the Talon shadows closed in, I focused, drawing deep from within, from every flicker of light I could find. "You will be banished," I cried, thrusting the lantern forward with intensity. In an instant, the glow surged, expanding outward, illuminating the chamber in brilliant waves of golden light. The figure screamed, a horrifying sound, as the light slammed into it, splintering the darkness. I felt the force of the keeper's hatred thrumming in the air, but I refused to relent. I pushed harder, channeling the energy of the light, feeling it pulse with every heartbeat. "I have faced horrors you cannot imagine," I shouted, the room vibrating under the weight of my words. "You will not take what isn't yours." The chamber shook violently as the darkness splintered, fractals of shadows zipping away from the blaze of the lantern. They writhed and twisted, seeking an escape, but the radiance enveloped them, reducing their influence to nothingness. But just as I thought the battle was won, the Keeper's wrath surged back with a vengeance. "You think you can rid yourself of me?" it screeched, voice echoing with alarm and fury. "I will haunt you until the end of your days." The shadows reformed, a gaping maw of dark fury that lurched toward me, pulling at my light even as I stood firm. A chilling fear crept back, wanting to swallow me whole, and for a moment, doubt seeped through my resolve. But in that instant of weakness, I heard their whispers again, lost souls, encouraging me, a chorus of hope weaving between the shadows. They had suffered enough. I couldn't let their tragedy bind me. "You may haunt me," I said through gritted teeth, "but I will not be a prisoner." Summoning everything I had left, I focused the light into a powerful beam, launching it straight toward the Keeper. The room erupted into blinding brightness, a kaleidoscope of colors scattering the darkness like broken glass, leaving nothing but a deafening silence in its wake. As the echoes faded, I found myself standing in a stark white room, still and quiet. Confusion settled over me like a blanket. The battle felt lost and won all at once, yet I could feel a presence lingering. "What have you done?" came a voice, soft yet sharp, cutting through the stillness. I spun around, the shock freezing me in place. The echo of my past battles gripped my heart, and as I stared into the familiar face emerging from the shadows, horror clawed at my insides. "Do you think this is over?" The figure's face twisted into a grotesque smile, eyes gleaming with malicious glee. "You've only just begun to unravel the threads of your own fear." And just like that, I realized this was far from finished. The shadows were still close, still whispering my name, ready to captivate my soul with the weight of their pain. A chill swept through me as I understood that I would have to confront everything I had buried. "I will find you," I declared, my voice steadier than I felt, as I took a step forward into the horror waiting to consume me. "I will fight until the very end." The chamber pulsed with uneasy energy, a heartbeat echoing through the silence. I had thought the battle was over, but the war had just begun. As the shadows began to swirl around me once more, I couldn't help but wonder what horrors lay ahead, lurking in the abyss of my own soul. My heart raced as the darkness thickened, the air oppressive and heavy, almost suffocating. Each step I took felt like wading through thick mud, as if the very ground was conspiring to hold me back, to keep me trapped in this nightmare. The whispers crescendoed around me, soft yet menacing, coiling around my mind like a serpent. "You're not ready," they hissed, the chilling sound wrapping around me. "You will always be part of us." The walls began to close in, the chamber shrinking as fear clawed at my chest. I turned quickly, scanning my surroundings. The faces of the lost souls, now distorted and grotesque, flickered in the shadows, their mouths open in silent screams, their eyes pleading, filled with an agony that made my stomach churn. I staggered backward, feeling a cold sweat break out across my forehead. The Keeper was playing games, drawing out my fears, revealing the horrors hidden deep within. Dark tendrils slithered from the corners, wrapping around my ankles, yanking me down as if trying to drag me into the void. "You think fighting is all you need? You will face your truth," it taunted, laughter echoing in the air, chilling me to my core. "Let me go," I shouted, struggling against their grip, but the more I fought, the tighter they squeezed. The darkness felt alive, pulsing with a malevolent energy, dragging me toward that gaping maw of despair that beckoned from the shadows. I gasped as I felt the presence behind me, a weight of malicious anticipation. Gathering my strength, I swung the lantern again, sending a burst of light into the depths of the chamber. "I won't be your plaything," I screamed, hoping to shatter their confidence, to utter my defiance. The light surged outward, clashing with the encroaching darkness. But as I fought, I began to hear something else beneath the whispers, hushed voices murmuring secrets, deep and personal. Each one pierced my heart like a dagger, revealing my past failures, the regrets I had shoved deep down. You think you can escape your sins? One voice, smooth like silk, slid through the air. You abandoned them. You failed. Image after image assaulted my mind. Friends I had let slip away, moments of betrayal I had pushed aside. I staggered, stumbling as shadows clawed at me, dredging up memories I couldn't bear to face. The lantern's light flickered as a wave of despair washed over me, this onslaught of guilt threatening to drown me. "Stop!" I cried, desperately forcing their whispers away. But they surged back, relentless, crashing over me like waves. "You're not enough," they echoed, voices intertwining in a chilling symphony of despair. "You'll never be enough." The chamber shifted again, warping into a horrifying replica of my past, a twisted nightmare. I found myself standing in the middle of a room that used to be my childhood home, but it was decayed, darkened by the shadows creeping in from the corners. The wallpaper peeled off in grotesque patterns, revealing sickening colors beneath. The floorboards creaked ominously, echoing my heartbeat as I stepped forward. "No, this can't be real," I muttered as I recognized the lingering scent of burnt wood and ash, a memory I had buried deep within. It felt like a trap, baiting me to step further into its maw. And then they appeared, flickering figures from my past, their faces twisted in anguish and rage. My parents stood there, shadows of their former selves. "You left us," they accused, their voices melding into a haunting melody, sorrow laced with anger. "You abandoned us when we needed you most." I stumbled back, the pain in my chest intensifying. "I didn't mean to," I gasped, tears stinging my eyes. "I was just trying to survive." The shadows loomed closer, their whispers drowning out my pleas, wrapping around my throat like the keeper's dark coils, squeezing the air from my lungs. "I am not the monster you make me," I screamed, a note of desperation breaking through. But the shadows only laughed, a swirling cacophony of jeering voices echoing in harmony. Each laugh sent daggers of ice through my veins, reinforcing the sense of doom. Could they always hold such power over me? I knew I had to break free. I swayed on my feet, raising the lantern again. "No more!" I shouted, a trembling defiance rising within me. I focused on the warmth of the light, letting it pour forth from my heart, igniting my will. I channeled every ounce of hope, every regret transformed into a weapon of courage to challenge the shadows. In an eruption of brilliance, the lantern illuminated the room, casting away dark corners, forcing the haunting figures back for just a moment. "I am more than my past. I'm not defined by my failures." I cried out with every ounce of conviction I had, ready to shake off the chains that bound me. For a brief moment, I felt the shadows hesitate, darkness flickering like flames caught in wind. But just as quickly, a tumultuous roar exploded around me. The keeper was furious, swirling shadows crashing together, slamming against the walls with a fury I could feel deep in my bones. "You cannot fight me," it screeched, the once familiar voice now distorted, filled with rage. "I will shatter your spirit, just as I shattered their souls." The room twisted and warped, morphing into a hall of mirrors, each reflection showing a different version of myself, frightened, broken, desperate. One mirror reflected the image of a child, alone and scared, eyes wide with tears. Another showed a teenager, riddled with anger, screaming into the void of nothingness. Each reflection tormented me, whispering my weaknesses in hissing voices. "Look closer," the keeper taunted, shadows crawling along the frames. "You see? You are still the same. You will always be alone." "No!" I screamed, disoriented by the kaleidoscope of my failures. I felt the weight of despair flooding back as each mirror taunted me. But deep down, I recalled the strength I had summoned before. I pushed back the fear, reminding myself of the glimmers of hope I had inspired in others. "Let the light in," a voice urged within, echoing the silent support from the souls who clung to me in the darkness. I raised the lantern again, its glow growing more intense. Each heartbeat resonated with the colors of their gratitude, reminding me that, despite everything, I was not alone. With a surge of newfound determination, I closed my eyes and channeled the warmth of my memories. Love, courage, and resilience ignited inside me, bursting forth in a dazzling explosion of light that shattered the halls of mirrors around me. Each reflection broke apart like glass, crumbling with a satisfying shatter that echoed through the chamber. As the darkness recoiled, I felt the keeper's presence falter, fear rippling in its breath. "What have you done?" it whispered, deep and shaky. The shadows shrank back, losing their grip on me, as the light continued to pour forth in rushing waves. With each moment, I pushed further into the heart of the chamber, revealing what lay hidden beneath the shadows. An ancient tree, gnarled and twisting, its bark marked with the stories of all the souls it had consumed. Its roots twisted into the ground, binding it to the darkness that threatened to consume everything. "This is the source of your power," I realized, understanding the need to confront this grotesque heart of despair. The faces of those I had lost twinkled in the air, ethereal yet strong, invoking memories of love and hope. I stepped forward, my heart pounding, ready to embrace the light that would banish the darkness for good. "I will not let you consume any more souls," I shouted at the ancient tree, raising the lantern high. The energy inside pulsed with life, illuminating the chamber, filling it with warmth that completely contrasted the cold grip of shadows. "Foolish child," the keeper howled, rage flooding its voice. "You're merely a flicker, a temporary blip against this eternal darkness." "No!" I pushed back, defiance roaring in my chest. "I am the light. I am the choice to break this cycle." As the golden light enveloped the tree, I felt its energy collide with my own, expanding outward in brilliant waves. The roots recoiled, shrieking under the light's intensity, the shadows clawing at the edges, desperately trying to hold on. A violent duel raged between darkness and light, swirling above me in a tempest of emotions, spilling onto the very ground beneath my feet. With the full weight of my memories feeding into the lantern, I propelled myself forward. "This ends now," I declared, letting the growing radiance surge forth with a force that shuddered through the very fabric of the chamber. The keeper's snarls turned to screams as the light engulfed the ancient roots, washing over the darkness like an unstoppable wave. The shadows disintegrated, each scream echoing as fragments of despair melted away, replaced with light. I felt the keeper waver, its power bending under the onslaught like a fragile glass figure. But even in its fury, I sensed something flicker, a desperate, disquieting feeling that deepened the shadows lurking at the edges. Was it rage or something else? I couldn't tell, but I pressed on, focused on the light, on banishing the dark terror that had wrapped itself around my spirit for far too long. In this final hour, I also felt something else rising, an unsettling whisper of doubt, scuttling in the corners of my mind. "What if you lose?" a voice murmured, tantalizing and cruel. "What if you fail again?" I pushed it aside, but its claws dug deeper, each word echoing inside my head, reminding me of every defeat, every moment of weakness. "You will always be alone," it hissed mockingly, wrapping around me like a shroud. I gasped, feeling its icy fingers clutching my heart, squeezing sorrow into my veins. "No!" I shouted, struggling against it, forcing my thoughts away from the darkness creeping in. "I am not alone. I have faced my fears." The shadows writhed around the tree, dark tendrils still resisting. But with every ounce of strength and light I had left, I charged forward, wielding my lantern like a sword, cutting through the suffocating anxiety. "This is mine. You do not own me." The pulsating glow surged with my heart until it expanded, engulfing me in a cocoon of warmth. I felt the keeper's power falter, the rage in its voice sinking into the echoing abyss, replaced by a shriek of fear reverberating through the walls. Then everything exploded in a brilliant flash of light. The air crackled, the world swirling around me, shadows and light colliding, a tempest of existence unraveling. I closed my eyes, surrendering to the brilliance, determined not to succumb to despair once more. As the brightness swallowed me whole, I felt the chains shatter, those lingering shadows that had once gripped my heart falling away like autumn leaves in a storm. I held my breath, the tension coiling tighter until I couldn't tell where I ended, and the light began. But just as I thought I was free, a whisper, soft yet chilling, caressed my ear. "You will return," it promised, eternal and haunting. "You can't escape the darkness forever." I opened my eyes in shock, heart racing in a world I thought I had escaped, surrounded by swirling light, but acutely aware of the remnants of shadows still lurking, waiting for their chance to strike again. I stood in the blinding light, heart pounding, the echo of the keeper's voice still resonating in my mind. A sense of unease crept in, curling around my spine like a cold serpent. I felt weightless, as if suspended between realms, but beneath that illusion, shadows lurked, creeping at the edges of my vision. The luminescence flickered, casting eerie shapes that danced along the walls, morphing into twisted forms of dread. I strained my eyes, trying to focus on the brightness that felt like a haven, but it flickered again, and suddenly, a chill swept through the air, like the breath of something ancient and malevolent. "Where am I?" I whispered, my voice trembling. The walls appeared to pulsate, and in that instant, I noticed cracks forming, dark and jagged, snaking through the once brilliant glow. They crept toward me like fingers reaching out of a grave, pulling the light back, devouring its essence. A low rumble reverberated through the ground beneath me, vibrating my core. Fear clawed at my throat as the abyss opened, tendrils of shadow swirling up, reaching for my ankles, stealthily tugging at my feet. I stepped back instinctively, panic flooding my senses. "Not again," I muttered, but the shadows whispered back, their voices brushing against my skin, soft and poisonous. "You thought you were free, didn't you? But we know your heart. You cannot outrun your own darkness." I turned, racing down a corridor that materialized before me, made from that same moody light fighting against the encroaching shadows. The walls seemed to close in, shrinking toward me as I ran, the echoes of my hurried breaths mingling with the whispers, creating a haunting symphony that taunted my every footstep. Shapes darted in and out of my peripheral vision, phantoms draped in twilight, watching. I could feel their eyes on me, cold, calculating, waiting for a moment of weakness. I needed to escape, to break free from their grasp that threatened to pull me back into despair. Then I stumbled into a chamber, vast and echoing. The space was filled with memories, every object heavy with nostalgia and regret. Old photographs hung in tarnished frames, their glass surfaces cracked and dusty, faces blurred but still recognizable. Each image screamed of laughter, love, and life, but they felt frozen, worn down by time, just like my heart. I stepped closer to an ancient mirror, its surface darkened with grime. My reflection stared back, but it wasn't just me. Images of those I had lost flickered within, hundreds of faces peering out from the foggy glass. "You let us down," they whispered, voices overlapping in a chilling chorus. "You needed us, but you turned away." Panic surged in my chest, squeezing tighter as shadows slithered across the floor. They whispered promises of comfort, their allure tempting despite the horror they contained. I stumbled back, eyes wide with terror, realizing they were beckoning me to finally give in, to drown in the sorrow I had fought so hard against. Suddenly, the mirror crackled, sending shards exploding into the air. Each piece reflected moments of my life I tried so desperately to forget. The day I lost my first love, the anger I felt when my best friend betrayed me, and the way my heart felt like a hollow vessel after losing my family. With each glistening fragment, I saw my anguish laid bare, a tapestry of regrets made more vivid in that bleak space. Then, the keeper's voice echoed again, this time close, its breath hot against my ear. Relive it, it crooned. You cannot escape your truths. They are your chains. I raised the lantern instinctively. Its glow flickered, as if sensing the rising darkness that sought to entrap me. You're wrong, I shouted, the words breaking free from my lips, trying to assert control. I can choose my path. The shadows roared back in defiance, a swirling mass of fury. Your path is already set. You are bound to us. The walls trembled, and the darkness surged forward, grasping at me, each tendril cold and stinging against my skin. I felt it clawing at my will, scraping through my memories like a knife, dragging forth all my fears. Desperation gripped me. The light from my lantern flickered again, weaker this time, struggling against the encroaching pitch-black depths. No, no, I gasped, heart racing as I felt the weight of the shadows, a heaviness threatening to smother the last glimmers of hope. Please, I have come too far to turn back now. Just then, I caught a glimpse of a more profound light emerging from the darkness ahead. It shimmered, beckoning me like a distant star in a night sky. With a newfound determination, I dashed forward, pushing through the cold, grasping tendrils, feeling them tear at the edges of my soul. I will not be a prisoner of you any longer, I roared, the sound echoing through the chamber as I raced toward the light. The keeper's laughter rang out, a cacophony of dark delight that shook the very foundation beneath me. Foolish child, you think you can outrun your fate? The shadows lunged at me, tendrils wrapping around my wrists, pulling me back, dragging me down as I fought against them. But the light grew closer, shining brighter with each step. I felt its warmth wash over me, coating my skin, filling my lungs with hope. I will not lose, I shouted with every ounce of strength, the words fueling the lantern in my hands. In one final effort, I swung the lantern above my head, unleashing all the energy I had left. A blinding wave surged from it, tearing through the darkness and illuminating everything around me. This is my choice, I yelled, and the illumination swallowed the shadows, illuminating the faces of the souls entwined with the keeper. They shimmered in the light, trapped yet calming, forming a circle of acceptance and love. My heart raced, feeling their presence surge against the oppressive weight of despair. Thank you, I whispered, tears streaming down my cheeks. I won't let your pain be in vain. The darkness recoiled, shrieking in fury. The ancient tree twisted, roots thrashing violently as the light surged through the chamber, rooting out the bitterness buried deep within the shadows. I pushed forward, channeling all my love and memories into that brilliant beacon, determined to free them once and for all. But then I felt the keeper's presence returning, heavier than before, wrapping around me like chains of despair, drenching my spirit in fear. Do you really think you could defeat me? It growled of violence, lacing its voice. Shadows spiraled around me, spiraling into a vortex, pulling me under as I struggled against their grasp. Fight, the echoing voices urged, their unity strong. Fight with us. And suddenly, I felt them surge in strength, a wave of energy flowing through me, fueling my resolve. With one final cry, I released the light from my lantern with such intensity that the shadows seemed to scream in torment. The room exploded in brilliance, the ancient tree trembling and the echoes of lost souls screaming with joy, finally free from their shackles. In that moment of freedom, the darkness around me shattered like glass, scattering into a million dust particles that glittered like stars in the now brightened space. I stood firm, the last tendrils curling away, dissipating in the light that now engulfed everything. But as the remnants of darkness faded, a new silence filled the air, heavy with the promise of uncertainty. I felt the keeper's essence linger, a whisper weaving through the air, taunting and mocking. You think this is the end? You haven't seen the last of me. Despite the dazzling light surrounding me, I felt a tremor of dread. I knew then it wasn't over. The keeper may have weakened, but the shadows still lurked in the corners of my mind, waiting, plotting for a moment of vulnerability when they could pounce again. I took a deep breath, a mix of cautious hope swirling with lingering fear. I had won this battle, but the war within me was far from over. I glanced around at the remnants of the chamber, now awash in brilliant light. Shadows only a whisper of the hell I had just faced. Yet I could still sense a dark presence, lurking just beyond the light. Where would I turn next? The uncertainty gnawed at my insides as I peered down the now silent corridor. Something beckoned me further into the unknown, each step potentially leading to a new horror. Would I be ready to face what awaited in the dark corners of this place? Resolute, I stepped forward, determined to confront whatever nightmare lay ahead. And I felt the weight of the lantern in my hands, an ever-present reminder of the light battling to keep the shadows at bay. I had faced the Keeper, and I would face whatever came next, even as the chilling whispers echoed behind me, promising that this was merely a prelude to a much darker story unfolding. The corridor stretched out before me, dim and foreboding, walls cloaked in shadows that twisted and shifted as I walked. The flickering light from my lantern created dancing shapes, making the dark seem alive, slithering along the ground like snakes seeking warmth. Each step I took echoed, deep and hollow, absorbing the light and replacing it with an oppressive silence that clawed at my sanity. I moved cautiously, knowing each turn might unveil something unimaginable. The air became thick with an unsettling tension, a heavy blanket of anticipation that pressed on my chest. I could feel the chill creeping toward me, wrapping around my limbs like icy fingers. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up as I sensed that unseen eyes were watching, savoring my fear as I ventured deeper into the unknown. Then I arrived at a small alcove just off the corridor. A faint glimmer caught my eye, a tiny, ornate mirror hanging on the wall, its surface cracked and dusty. Even from a distance, I could see an unnatural distortion rippling across it, almost as if something lurked just behind the glass. Intrigued and terrified, I stepped closer, my heart pounding against my ribcage like a frantic bird trying to escape. As I approached, the mirror began to shimmer, and its cracks widened, forming jagged lines that seemed to pulse with a heartbeat of their own. I couldn't pull my gaze away as images flickered within, snippets of my past intertwined with unsettling visions. I saw my childhood home, but it was empty, the walls peeling as shadows flittered past the corners. The laughter that once filled those rooms had morphed into muted whispers. I heard my own name echo softly, calling me from the depths of that darkened place, and I felt an overwhelming urge to reach into the mirror, to touch that familiar fragment of my life. Suddenly, a chill shot through my fingertips, and it felt like a cool breath sliding down my neck. The glass, now alive with movement, reflected things I didn't recognize, twisted figures, their faces shrouded in darkness, their eyes gleaming with an eerie hunger. They reached out, grasping toward me, fingers stretching through the glass, almost bridging the gap between realms. "Help us," their voices urged, a haunting melody that wrapped around my mind, tugging at my heartstrings. I stumbled back, shaking my head, fighting the urge to give in to their cries. I was not here to save anyone but myself. The Keeper had shown me enough terror for a lifetime, and yet I felt a familiar pull, a tether binding me to the figures. As I turned to escape their grasp, a loud crash echoed from deeper within the corridor, rattling my bones. The sound grew ominous, like a heavy door slamming shut, and it sent a jolt of fear racing through me. I felt the air shift, cold and sudden, wrapping around my limbs like a serpent. The darkness grew thicker, curling around the edges of the alcove, and I hesitated, the urge to flee clashing with the need to understand the source of that noise. I pressed on, trembling as I ventured further into the shadowy void, the flickering light from the lantern flickering low. Each footfall echoed in the silence, stretching time as dread coiled in my stomach. Then, a figure emerged from the gloom, standing at the far end of the corridor, bathed in an unsettling light that seemed to consume the shadows around it. The figure was tall and cloaked in darkness, its features obscured beneath a hood that whispered of ages lost. I hesitated, pulse racing, heart pounding like a war drum. "Who are you?" I managed to croak, voice trembling as I held the lantern tightly, ready to fend off whatever horror loomed. The figure shifted slightly, revealing a twisted smile that sent shivers down my spine. "I am what you fear most," it hissed, voice smooth yet unnatural, swirling with the echoes of 1,000 lost souls. "I am the keeper of your fears, the custodian of your regrets." My breath caught in my throat, and I felt the weight of its words wrap around me like a dark shroud. Desperation surged within me. I wasn't going to be trapped here again. "You don't own me. I've already faced you," I shouted, feeling the heat radiating from the lantern, pushing back against the shadows. The figure chuckled, a sound that slithered through the air, wrapping around me like tendrils. "You think you faced me? I've only just begun." With that, it lifted a hand, and the air darkened, shadows swirling violently at its command. The ground shook, sending tremors through my body, and I lost my footing, stumbling backward as the darkness surged forward. I scrambled to regain my balance, fists clenched around the lantern, determination burning deep within. The shadows closed in, but I thrust the lantern forward, its warm light cutting through the cold, spreading outward like a shield. The figure recoiled, stepping back into darkness as it shrieked, a sound of rage and frustration that pierced through my resolve. "Do you really think light can banish me?" It seethed, a chilling menace threading through every word. "You know, it only takes a flicker for the darkness to reclaim what it lost." The shadows writhed hilariously, encircling me, a cacophony of whispers chanting my name. "You belong to us," they echoed, hunger wrapping around the syllables, drowning everything in despair. Memories sliced through my mind, every failure, every moment of self-doubt, urgently flooding back, trying to drown me in an ocean of regret. I pushed against the weight of their voices, desperation filling my heart. "No, I am more than this," I yelled, planting my feet firmly on the ground, gathering the energy coursing through the lantern. I felt warmth radiating from within, wrapping around my heart like an embrace, igniting hope in the face of despair. With a surge of courage, I hurled the lantern toward the figure cloaked in shadows. The moment it shattered, light erupted in an explosion of brilliance, forcing the darkness to recoil. It illuminated the chamber, pushing back against the encroaching horror, casting the shadows away like fading nightmares. But as the light expanded, I sensed something lurking beyond its reach, something ancient and powerful ready to unleash itself. For a moment, I caught a glimpse of the figure's true face, twisted and grotesque, a fusion of lost souls and forgotten fears that made bile rise in my throat. Its eyes glimmered with malevolence, depths of endless night swirling within. "No, this ends here," I screamed, the flickering brightness growing and without warning smashing into the figure, engulfing it in a blinding glow. It howled, voices multiplying in a chorus of agony as they spiraled into the air, dark tendrils recoiling, striking against the walls in a frenzy of chaos. But the light I crafted to save myself was weary, its strength shifting, vulnerable as the shadows recoiled and scrambled to regain their ground. I could feel the remnants of the Keeper's power pressing against me, waiting for a moment of weakness to strike. I took a step back, heart pounding, the fatigue pressing against my chest like an anchor. Yet within me, a flicker of rage ignited, feeding on the fear that had once loomed so large. "I will not be your prisoner. Not now. Not ever," I shouted, pushing against the darkness with every ounce of will I had left. As the figure writhed in pain, I saw shadows dart around me, gathering once more, momentarily dismissed but more resolute than ever. "You may escape for now," it hissed through clenched teeth, "but this is far from over. Your light is a mere distraction. You're still bound to your past, and I will find you again." The echoes of that promise hung heavily in the air, creeping into my thoughts like a persistent ghost, whispering the truth of my fears. I took a deep breath, shaking off the heaviness, clutching the lantern and pushing deeper into the shadows, ready to confront whatever lay waiting in the dark corners where nightmares thrived. Every step felt laden with dread, but I couldn't stop now. It was my fight. I had to reclaim my spirit, face what lurked in the darkness, and silence the echoes of my past forever. Little did I know, the Keeper wasn't the only horror birthed from my fears. And as I pressed onward, the true terror awaiting me would force me to confront not just the darkness but the fragments of my own fractured soul. I took a deep breath, shaking off the heaviness, clutching the lantern and pushing deeper into the shadows, ready to confront whatever lay waiting in the dark corners where nightmares thrived. Every step felt laden with dread, but I couldn't stop now. It was my fight. I had to reclaim my spirit, face what lurked in the darkness, and silence the echoes of my past forever. Little did I know, the Keeper wasn't the only horror birthed from my fears. The air grew colder as I ventured further into the shadowed depths, with each breath visible like smoke swirling around me. I could hear the faintest whisper of wind, but it sounded more like a chorus of soft cries trailing behind me, tugging at my consciousness. They were saturated with sorrow and despair, their ghostly notes a reminder of all I had lost. I pressed on, the lantern sputtering against the oppressive darkness, illuminating only enough to guide my path. Then, I stumbled into a wide chamber. It felt ancient, the ceiling arching high above, twisted vines creeping along the walls like fingers grasping for escape. A deep sadness washed over me as I took in the remnants of shattered statues, their forms distorted and barely recognizable among the rubble. They seemed to watch me with pity, eyes carved from stone, frozen in time, reminding me of my own shattered hopes. In the center of the room, an altar rose from the ground, its surface stained with what looked like old blood, darkened and bubbling in the flickering light. Something in my gut twisted as I approached, pulling me closer against my better judgment. I was almost transfixed, staring at the altar when I noticed there were objects scattered around. Forgotten trinkets, broken toys, and letters yellowed with age, all whispering tales of long-lost dreams. Unearthly echoes resonated through the chamber, seeming to beckon to me. I walked toward the altar despite every instinct screaming to turn back. My hands trembled as I reached out toward the nearest artifact, a cracked porcelain doll with lifeless eyes staring right through me. Its expression was frozen in a silent scream, a reflection of the terror clawing at my heart. I felt a strange connection with it, a desperation that mingled with my own. As I touched the doll's cold face, a wave of cold air rushed over me, and I recoiled, heart racing. In that instant, the entire chamber seemed to shift. The air thickened with something sinister, a presence growing stronger behind me, wrapping around me like a predator closing in on its prey. I spun around, the lantern barely illuminating the corner of the room. There, as if emerging from the shadows themselves, stood a figure, an amalgamation of the fragmented fears I held. It twisted unnaturally, limbs elongated and bent at awkward angles, its body shifting and blending with the darkness. Hollow eyes gleamed, their depths swirling with the echoes of my past, visceral and raw. This was not the Keeper, but a darker reflection of myself. Every regret, every pain, every moment of sorrow brought to life, now staring back at me. "Welcome," it rasped, voice dripping with mockery. "Did you think you could escape me? I am the specter of your own making, the truth you wish to bury." Panic surged within me, and I took a step back, breathing shallowly. "No, you aren't real. You're just a fragment of my mind," I shouted, words laced with defiance, even as I felt my conviction wavering. I forced myself to hold the lantern steady, its light flickering as the shadows lurked closer, creeping along my skin like 1,000 icy fingers. The figure's twisted smile widened, revealing rows of teeth that glinted in the firelight, making me shudder. "But I am very real, and so are your fears." It stepped closer, the ground beneath it warping as if the earth itself shrank away from its presence. Remember the pain? The moments you could have changed? I am your past, and I will never let you forget. As it spoke, the visions took shape around me, swirling like a tempest. I was suddenly flooded with memories. The day I lost my family, the car crash that altered my life forever, the betrayal that shattered my trust. Each moment played out vividly, haunting me like a never-ending nightmare. I screamed and staggered back, clutching my head, overwhelmed by the surge of grief. Stop! I can't, but the memories kept coming, tightening their grip, latching onto my psyche like parasitic leeches sucking away the light. Suddenly, the ground shook violently, and the walls seemed to pulse, blood-red veins lining the stones as if the chamber itself breathed alongside this darkness. I stumbled to the floor, my lantern flickering erratically, threatening to go dark. Just then, whispers arose from the shadows, rising in a cacophony that drowned out my thoughts. "You are lost," they hissed. "You will always be lost." I felt desperation clawing at my throat as I fought against the overwhelming tide of dread. But then I remembered the flicker of light, the warmth that had ignited within me before. It hadn't vanished. It was merely hidden beneath the weight of my sorrow, summoning every ounce of strength. I grabbed the lantern and set it down firmly on the floor before me, taking a deep breath. "I won't be defined by you," I bellowed, feeling the warmth of the lantern's glow intensified as I focused my will on it. "You're not my master. You are just memories, and I can let you go." The shadows groaned at my words, trying to crush my resolve. The figure writhed in frustration, its form collapsing and twisting as if in physical pain. "You fool!" it shrieked. "You will never escape the truth." As I spoke again, I felt the lantern pulse beneath my hands, radiating warmth through the cold air. "You can't hurt me anymore. You don't get to control me," I shouted, and the light erupted from the lantern in a brilliant wave, filling the chamber with its glow. The shadows recoiled violently, shrieking as the light ripped through them, dispersing their power like smoke caught in a gale. I could feel something within me loosening, a bond breaking that had held my fears against my will. The twisted figure writhed, its amalgamation of pain and regret splintering away, dissolving into the ether like mist in the wind. With a final pulse of brilliance, everything exploded into color, drowning the room in light. The echoes of sorrow faded, replaced by silence. I stood there, panting heavily, heartbeat racing as I surveyed the remnants of what remained. The chamber now reflected a different story. Walls adorned with vibrant images of joy, happier memories breaking through the darkness. Yet, deep down, I knew the darkness wasn't truly gone, merely dormant, waiting for a moment of weakness to resurface. I gathered my breath, heart still pounding, and stepped cautiously through the now vibrant chamber. I needed to push onward, to confront whatever lay ahead in this labyrinth of fears and shadows. But as I moved forward, I could feel a cold breeze flowing through the chamber, rustling the images into ghostly whispers. The sudden rush sent a chill down my spine, colder than before. Was I really free? Or was this merely a temporary facade, an illusion crafted by my mind to protect me from the harshness of reality? The flickering light from my lantern dimmed momentarily. A creeping feeling of dread settled in my stomach again, making me shiver. There was still danger lurking around the next corner, just beyond the reach of my light, ready to pounce at the slightest hint of vulnerability. I took another step, determination suffusing my veins, but I knew that this journey had only begun. The shadows were still waiting in the dark, eager to reclaim their grip, and I had to keep fighting against their call. Whatever lurked ahead would force me to confront not only the darkness that sought to consume me, but the flickering light within, the light that reminded me I was still alive, still fighting, still choosing to move forward. Emboldened but wary, I pressed on down that twisted path, each step leading me closer to the heart of my fears and deeper into the night. What awaited me beyond the next shadow? I could only hope the light would be enough to guide me through the horrors yet to come. As I moved forward, the corridor narrowed, the walls closing in around me like the grip of a vice. The chill in the air deepened, wrapping around my body, whispering secrets that made my skin crawl. I could hear the faintest sound, low and rhythmic, almost like a heartbeat, pulsing from the shadows behind me. My lantern flickered, casting long, distorted shapes on the walls that danced in the dim light. It was as if the darkness itself was breathing, exhaling its dread upon me. Suddenly, the heartbeat grew louder, more insistent, matching the frantic pace of my own pulse. I turned to look behind me, the light revealing nothing but the endless dark. The sound wasn't just in my head. It had a physical presence, thriving on my fear, vibrating through the ground beneath my feet. Panic swelled within me as I pressed on, hoping to outrun whatever lay in wait. The corridor twisted, leading me down a side passage that opened into another room. The walls were adorned with grotesque paintings, each one depicting moments of agony. Faces twisted in terror, mouths wide in silent screams, bodies contorted in unnatural poses. It was a gallery of suffering, each image freezing a moment in time, capturing the essence of fear and regret. The very air vibrated with despair, and I felt a surge of nausea wash over me, as if the walls themselves were dripping with the essence of sorrow. In the center of the room stood a pedestal, empty save for an ornate box that seemed to beckon me closer. The box was intricately carved, with symbols that flowed and twisted like smoke, hinting at secrets long forgotten. I approached it cautiously, every instinct screaming at me to turn back. But the allure was irresistible, the shadows curling around it like fingers stretching to touch the light. As I reached for the box, the temperature dropped several degrees, and the heartbeat intensified, echoing in my ears like a war drum. The moment my fingers brushed the cold surface, a sharp pain shot through my hand, as if the box had a lingering malevolence ready to claw at my skin. I snatched my hand back, heart racing, but the box trembled as if roused from slumber. With a creak that echoed like a funeral bell, it sprang open. Inside lay a mirror, framed with the same swirling designs that adorned the box. But this mirror was different. It shimmered and shifted, reflecting not just my image but shadows flitting around me, darker than despair itself. I peered into it, entranced, and saw visions of myself, each one more twisted and tormented than the last. Each reflection seemed alive, whispering my faults and regrets in a chorus of accusations. "Look at what you've become," they seemed to taunt. "You can never escape this." I felt bile rise in my throat, the air growing heavy with despair. The mirror pulled at me, drawing me into its depths, hoping to drag me into a darkness I feared I could never escape. I tore my gaze away, heart pounding as I backed up, desperate to distance myself from the relentless whispers. But as I stepped back, I felt something brush against my ankles, something cold and clammy. I looked down to see a thin, shadowy tendril snake wrapping around my leg, pulling me back toward the mirror. "No! Get away from me!" I screamed, kicking out frantically, but the shadows tightened their grip, relentless and hungry. With a surge of adrenaline, I remembered the light, the warmth that had ignited within me during my confrontation with the twisted figure in the chamber. I focused on it, willing the lantern to emit more brightness. I pointed it towards the tendril, praying it would push back against the encroaching darkness. The light flared, and for a moment, I felt resistance as the tendril recoiled, shrieking in a voice that sounded like 1,000 voices mingling into one tortured cry. The shadows around me surged, dark figures emerging from the walls, eyes gleaming with rage and hunger. They swarmed toward the light, clawing and grasping, whispering threats that rattled my very core, shrouding me in an atmosphere heavy with malice. I strained against the pulling tendril and thrust my lantern forward as the shadows neared, shouting, "You don't own me. You're just fear." My voice shook, but the conviction burned brighter with each word. The shadows faltered at my declaration, hesitating as the light pushed against them, illuminating their grotesque forms. In that moment of vulnerability, I saw their faces, shattered remnants of memories I'd buried deep within. They were lost moments from my past, regrets I had buried but never left behind. The numbness washed away, replaced by sheer terror as I recognized what they truly were. Pieces of me, lost and forgotten, pleading for recognition. But I couldn't falter now. I was here to reclaim myself, and I needed to confront these phantoms of the past. With resolve stealing my heart, I turned the lantern toward the mirror once more. "I will not live in fear," I shouted, focusing every ounce of my being into the light, illuminating the darkness like a beacon. The mirror began to ripple violently, distorting the images of my fears, sending shrieks of anguish through the air. In a blinding flash, the light erupted from the lantern, engulfing the room in a wave of warmth. The shadows screamed as they disintegrated before my eyes, dissipating into wisps of smoke, surrendering to the incandescent glow. But just as I felt a wave of relief wash over me, I heard the heartbeat return, louder and more insistent. My lantern flickered again, casting a pale glow across the room. I spun around to find that the shadows hadn't vanished completely. They were merely regrouping. The walls trembled as a distorted figure manifested from the darkness, its silhouette grotesque and monstrous. "I told you," it hissed, voice a twisted echo. "You cannot banish me. I am the shadow of your despair." It lunged toward me, more feral than before, its body twisting and contorting with abandon, limbs bending at impossible angles. The sight made my skin crawl, every instinct urging me to run, yet I stood my ground, tethered by the light within me. "Light cannot hold forever," it growled, inching closer, eyes burning with a cold fire that threatened to engulf me. "You have to confront me. You cannot escape." The throbbing heartbeat resonated through the ground, shaking me to my core as the creature lunged forward, sweeping claws of darkness aimed directly at me. In a moment of clarity, I realized it spoke a truth I couldn't ignore. I could not simply emit light and hope for salvation. I needed to confront the fears that continued to haunt me. I took a deep breath, feeling the power of the lantern surge within me once more. I was more than just the sum of my fears. I was more than every dark moment that had ever defined me. "Bring it on!" I shouted defiantly, positioning the lantern ahead of me, ready to face whatever came next. The figure halted, confusion flickering across its shadowy visage. I stepped forward, grounding myself in that burgeoning light, feeling warmth radiate through my chest as I faced this part of myself. As it lunged once more, I was ready. I unleashed the light, pouring everything I had into the beam, holding my ground firmly as the figure collided with the radiance. The clash sent shockwaves through the air, illuminating the dark chamber with a brilliance I hadn't thought possible, momentarily pushing the shadows back. Yet the figure wove through the light, refusing to be extinguished, as each of my past struggles flickered in the corners of the room, craving recognition. A dance of pain mingled with hope. I recognized how intertwined they were, how despair made way for resilience. The fear wasn't just a monster to slay, it was part of who I was. As the shadows writhed and twisted, I found clarity. "You are not my enemy. You are my past, and I am still here," I declared, voice steady, resonating with conviction. The figure hesitated, the darkness quivering as if it, too, sought acknowledgement. I could feel it battling within me, pain mixed with the strength of every battle I had already faced. With newfound determination, I thrust the lantern forward again, focusing the light not as a weapon, but as an acceptance of both my struggles and my triumphs. The glow surged brighter, enveloping the figure, illuminating its form until within the shadows, I could see familiar features twisted into expressions of sorrow and regret. It was not simply a creature of darkness. It was me, the parts one had tried to repress, longing for acceptance, wanting to be seen. Those eyes gazed back at me, filled with a longing I understood. I lowered the lantern slightly, the light becoming a gentle embrace rather than a harsh glare. "I will carry you with me," I whispered, feeling the echoes of my voice surround us both as the harshness of the shadows faded like mist at dawn. The figure paused, confusion morphing into something almost resembling understanding. Then, with a final shimmering pulse, the darkness collapsed into itself, each tendril retracting, folding back into the reflection of the mirror, which now shone with a softer light. I felt a weight lift off my shoulders, an ease settling over my heart. Still, I knew the shadows would always be there, lurking at the edges of my awareness. But now, they no longer held power over me. They were merely pieces of my journey, reminders of my strength, woven into the tapestry of my existence. As the remnants of the darkness faded, I dared to look into the mirror again. What I saw reflected back was not just fear, but strength, resilience, and a willingness to live. With a final breath, I stepped away from the pedestal, determined to continue this path. This was merely the beginning of a darker journey still ahead, but I felt lighter, steadier. Each step was my choice, and the light within me guided my way through the labyrinth of shadows yet to come. I would not be consumed. I would become the light that guided me through the darkness. With that purpose firmly rooted in my heart, I walked on, ready to face whatever awaited in the depths of fear's embrace. The air thickened as I left the room, creeping down the narrow passage that twisted like a serpent. Every step echoed, the sound trailing off into the void behind me. I could still feel the shadows lurking just beyond the reach of my lantern, waiting for the chance to overtake me again. The walls seemed to close in tighter with each passing moment, constricting around me like a noose, the cold creeping into my bones. I stumbled into another chamber, and my breath caught in my throat. This room felt entirely different, not just an echo of the darkness, but a realm of nightmares brought to life. The walls were lined with images, but instead of facing the past, they showed twisted futures. I could see myself standing helpless as I lost everything I ever cared for. In one vision, I watched a loved one drift away, their face contorted in anguish. In another, I was utterly alone, engulfed in shadows that whispered my deepest fears. My heart raced, the agony of each torturous scene digging into my mind like daggers. As I moved deeper, I noticed a rusted door at the far end of the room, its hinges screaming for release. A soft light flickered beneath it, promising escape, but tainted with uncertainty. I approached slowly, each footfall muffled by the malignant atmosphere surrounding me. I paused, pulse hammering in my ears, uncertain whether to push it open. That heartbeat returned, stronger now, pounding against my chest as if it belonged to the very walls. Suddenly, I heard a soft giggle, a sound that sent chills crawling up my spine. It echoed off the stone, bouncing around the chamber like a malevolent specter, entrenching itself in the shadows. "Come play with us," it taunted, a child's sing-song voice layered with something more sinister, something that hinted at a childhood nightmare. My breath quickened, and I glanced around, seeking the source of the voice. I could feel an unmistakable presence encroaching on my space, shifting in the darkness. The lantern flickered as though it, too, feared what lurked in the shadows. "Who's there?" I called, my voice tremulous but defiant, the words laced with an underlying terror. The childlike laughter grew louder, bubbling up from somewhere unseen. Shadows danced in response, elongating on the ground, as if they had a will of their own. A whisper brushed past my ear. "Stay with us," it said, sending ice through my veins. The laughter multiplied, echoing around me, creating a cacophony of twisted amusement that made my head spin. I grasped the lantern tighter, striding toward the door, determined not to be ensnared by whatever dark spirits haunted this place. As I reached for the handle, the laughter turned into a wail, a sound of pure despair that crashed into me like a tidal wave, driving me back a step. "You can't leave," it cried, the tone shifting from playful to desperate, laced with a sinking dread that filled the air. "You belong here." With renewed determination, I twisted the handle, and pushed the door open, the rusty hinges screeching in protest. Beyond, an even darker corridor stretched out. I could barely see what lay ahead, but a steady, pulsating glow beckoned me forward. I stepped inside, the shadows curling around me like smoke, soaking up the light from my lantern. As I moved deeper, the glow brightened, revealing more nightmarish scenes, faces twisted in anguish, mouths opened in silent screams, shadows crawling over their forms like living things. One face caught my eye, its features eerily familiar. It was my own, but it was distorted, pale, and wide-eyed, trapped behind the pains of despair. My heart raced as I realized it was not just a reflection of myself, but a warning. In a moment of panic, I tried to look away, but found myself unable to break my gaze. The figure gestured toward me with hands clawed, begging for escape, for recognition. "Don't let them take you," it cried, voice echoing with a haunting reverberation that clawed at my insides. "You cannot give in. You are stronger than them." The shadows writhed, the laughter returning, more mocking than before. I could sense the depths of their malice rising, the room trembling under their weight. They slithered toward me, hungry to claim me as part of their collection of lost souls. My heart pounded in my chest, and I took a step back, mulling the specter of defeat that threatened to overtake me. Suddenly, the room chilled, a gust of wind sweeping through, extinguishing my lantern momentarily. Darkness enveloped me, and I was plunged into a void, surrounded by whispers that crawled. Under my skin, I felt hands grasping, pulling at my clothes, my skin, dragging me back toward the twisted images scattered throughout the chamber. I fought against the pull, but the shadows were relentless, wrapping around my body like chains, squeezing tighter with each desperate gasp. "Please," I cried out, fear clawing at my throat, choking out my words. "Let me go." But they only laughed, the chilling sound reverberating through the darkness, echoing in my ears like a cursed lullaby. "You chose to come here," they sang, "and now you will stay forever." With every ounce of strength, I dug deep into my memory, pulling forth that flickering light within my heart. It felt like a fire inside me, burning against the darkness that threatened to drown me. I focused on the love I had for those I admired, the joy I had felt once, moments of laughter and warmth. I visualized that radiant glow, holding on to it as I recalled each happy memory, shared smiles, tender embraces, the simple pleasures of life that once made my heart soar. In that pivotal moment, I shouted, "You will not take me." The words exploded from my lips, fierce and defiant, resonating through the shadows. I felt the chains loosen. The laughter turned to screeches of frustration. The images around me warped, twisting into radiant pulse that emanated from within my core. With renewed vigor, I aimed the lantern down the corridor, its light erupting into a blinding flare, banishing the encroaching shadows. The figures fled, shrieking in agony as my light consumed their darkness. I felt an exhilarating surge of power rush through me, illuminating everything in my path. The twisted faces that had once haunted me shimmered, distorting then collapsing into nothingness. As they faded, I felt lighter, the suffocating chains of despair unraveling. The pull of the darkness slackened, releasing its grip on my spirit. I stumbled forward as the corridor began to morph into another room, a vast, formless void slowly reshaping itself into a sanctuary of light. Pillars of glowing energy shot up around me, illuminating the once gloomy space. I blinked against the brightness, amazed at the sudden transformation. The laughter diminished, replaced by a soothing silence that enveloped me like a warm blanket. As my eyes adjusted, I noticed an altar at the center of the room, radiant with a deep, golden glow. It pulsed rhythmically, echoing the heartbeat I had grown so accustomed to, now transformed into a calming melody. Something instinctual beckoned me forward, and I approached with slow steps, still wary of what lay ahead. On the altar was a small, intricately carved box, identical to the one from the previous room. My fingers itched to touch it, but hesitated as I studied the carvings. Mystical symbols swirling into shapes that felt strangely familiar, resonating with the very essence of who I was. It was a token of resolution, a means to transcend these dark fears once and for all. I placed my hands around the box, feeling its cool surface. The moment I touched it, the energy surged through my veins, sending electrifying pulses spiraling through my entire being. The visions that greeted me next were vivid, righteous, and surreal. My life unfolded before me, showcasing moments of strength and vulnerability, each one revealing a layer of my existence. As they played out, I heard whispering behind me, a soft, persistent calling. I turned to face an apparition, a figure emerging from the shadows. It was an ethereal version of myself, a reflection of the person I could become, powerful, unyielding, and free. The figure smiled, eyes sparkling with encouragement. You've broken the chains that bound you. Embrace who you are meant to be. I felt hope welling up within me, warming me from the inside out. This was my chance to reclaim my identity, to fuse the light I held with the shadows that lingered. I took a step closer, heart pounding with anticipation, waiting for the next revelation that could either liberate or ensnare me. The moment felt suspended in time as I clutched the box, a silent promise to confront the last remnants of darkness that still threatened to drag me down. I could feel the pulse of the room aligning with my own, a symphony of energy ready to burst forth into existence. The shadows were retreating, but I knew that without reconciliation, they would always linger at the edge of my consciousness, waiting for an opportunity to creep back into my life. Determined, I inhaled deeply, focusing on that flickering inner light I had summoned so many times before. I could not allow fear to dictate my path any longer. I was ready to face whatever lay within the box, whatever truths it held. It was now or never. As I slowly opened the lid, a blinding light filled the room, consuming everything in its warmth. I gasped as I was enveloped, the glow wrapping around me like a protective shroud, lifting me from the shadows of despair, carrying me towards something greater. The ethereal figure beside me nodded, encouragement radiating from it. Now, face yourself, it whispered, voice echoing with certainty. Embrace the light. It was time to forge my way forward, to reclaim the fragments of myself lost in that endless night. And as the last remnants of darkness slipped from my grasp, I stood on the precipice of something extraordinary, ready to step into a new, uncharted territory. As I opened the lid, a surge of power coursed through me, illuminating the dark corners of my mind. The pulsing light spiraled upward like a vortex, swirling around the room until it coalesced into a blinding orb. I shielded my eyes against the brilliance, feeling warmth and energy pouring into my soul, calling my fears and regrets back into focus. Shadows screeched in protest, their forms beginning to writhe and twist around the edges of the sanctuary. I felt a pressure building in the air, a storm brewing within the light, whispering truths long hidden beneath layers of despair. The shadows, emboldened, coalesced into familiar figures, ghostly images of myself from moments of weakness, moments of pain that had haunted me. They clawed at the walls of my sanctuary, their cries a terrifying chorus demanding recognition. You cannot escape, they shrieked, faces twisted in anguish. You will always be ours. In that moment of chaos, I felt the weight of their words, the fear creeping back into my heart. No! I yelled, my voice drowning out the echoes of their torment. I am not yours. I am free. With each declaration, the light around me surged, growing brighter and more intense. I could feel it pushing back against the darkness, washing over each shadow like a cleansing wave, and I stood at the center of its power, radiating resolve. The apparition beside me flickered, its form shifting like smoke as it beckoned for me to join the embrace of the light. But I could feel the shadows pulling at me, the bitter chill of regret encircling my ankles like a serpent. They don't want you to be whole, they hissed, their voices slicing through the air. They want you to remain lost. With every ounce of will, I turned my gaze toward the radiant orb of light, allowing it to seep into my heart and fill the cracks that the shadows had long exploited. Images surged through me, moments of laughter shared with friends, the warmth of family, and the deep breath of fresh air after a storm. I began to gather these memories, summoning them forth, pouring my essence into the light. Each recollection ignited a fierce blaze that pushed back against the encroaching figures, their claws falling short as my spirit illuminated the space around me. I faced the shadows directly, my heart pounding like a war drum. "You are part of my past, but you do not own my future," I screamed, planting my feet firmly on the cold ground. The shadows shrieked, recoiling as if stung, their forms flickering with uncertainty. "I have seen you for what you are. You are just a reflection of my fears, my pain, but I am not afraid anymore." With these resolute words, I thrust my hands forward, willing the light within me to explode outward. A tidal wave of brilliance surged forth, engulfing everything in its path. The darkness writhed and screamed as it was consumed, the faces twisting in horror as they realized their grip on me was slipping. I could feel their presence fading, becoming weaker, dissipating like mist under a scorching sun. But just as victory felt near, an insidious chill crept back into the air. A new figure emerged from the depths of shadow, more powerful than the others, an overwhelming presence that sent tremors coursing through my body. This was my greatest fear, a primal embodiment of all the pain and despair I had banished. It loomed, a monstrous silhouette, unraveling every ounce of courage I had summoned. "Did you think you could escape me?" It boomed, voice raspy and inhabited by 1,000 tormentors. "I am the echo of your soul, the darkness you cannot shake." It reached out, tendrils of shadow spiraling toward me, forcing me to confront the gnawing self-doubt buried deep within. My heart raced as a suffocating dread began to claw its way back, wrapping around me in a vice grip. But in that moment of horrifying recognition, I summoned every bit of light I had gathered. I could not let it take me. "I acknowledge you," I whispered, voice strong despite the terror coursing through me. "But you do not define me." The orb flickered, and I felt it pulsing in response, eager to fight back against the towering darkness. The tendrils paused, intangible fingers hovering inches from my skin. I closed my eyes, grounding myself in vulnerability, my spirit igniting with strength. "You are not my enemy," I proclaimed, unleashing the full force of the light coursing within me. "You are a part of my journey, but you will never consume me." The ball of luminescence burst forth, engulfing the monstrous figure, pouring over it like a radiant flood. The shadows shrieked in terror, clawing at the light with frantic desperation. I felt the cold tendrils withdrawing, their grasp fading into nothing as the warmth enveloped me completely, infusing my being with hope and vigor. As the brilliance engulfed the chamber, I saw the darkness dissolve, unraveling like a tapestry that had finally met its end. It screamed one last time before evaporating into nothingness. The ghastly elements that had tormented me began to dissipate, their cries giving way to silence. With the shadows defeated, the radiant light settled around me, a protective barrier that promised safety. I breathed heavily, feeling a cathartic wave of relief wash over me as clarity flooded my mind. The sanctuary pulsed gently, inviting me to bask in my triumph over the fear that had once overshadowed my very existence. I had faced my darkness and emerged unscathed, emerging at last into the light of my own truth. This journey was not merely an escape, it was a reclamation of my identity. I felt the weight of every struggle lift away, shedding the final remnants of fear, the last whispers of doubt that had trailed me for so long. I was free at last, standing on the precipice of a new beginning, my heart aflame with belief in my strength and resilience. Although the shadows might lurk at the edges of my consciousness, I knew now that they held no power over me. I would carry the light within, fierce and unwavering, ready to face whatever came next on this ever-unfolding journey of self-discovery. For I had learned to embrace both the light and the dark, forging them together into one intricate story, a story that belonged to me and me alone. As I stepped away from the altar, the light faded gently, morphing the once foreboding room into a serene space filled with soft whispers of hope. I took one last glance around, triumph bubbling within me, and strode confidently toward the exit, leaving behind the darkness that had once seemed insurmountable. This was no longer a place of fear. It was a testament to my strength, my will, and my unwavering resolve to rise above the shadows. The threshold I crossed was not just a doorway. It was the gateway to a life reclaimed, a life where I would never again shy away from the light.